I shoot it to kill it. I'm aiming for vitals, I'm showing no mercy when facing my rivals. Snakes in the grass, they getting exposed. I know they be lurking, I'm watching them close. Acting like friends, but really they foes. Saw they be scheming and said adios. Yeah, I gotta get it. Yeah, by any means. I gotta get it, don't mind it. I gotta get it, don't mind it. I gotta get it, don't mind it.
At the start of every year, racing fans across the globe turn their attention to the world center of racing. In a couple of weeks' time, the NASCAR community will descend for the Great American Race. But today, we kick off the road of iRacing special events with a roar. It's time for the 2022 iRacing Roar, a 2.4-hour solo event with 3 classes of competition. Delighted to have your company wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, joined alongside by the wonderful man in the hat, Paul Smith. Dougie Beard provides our track cameras for today's action. Tyler Maxon providing our car cameras for today's coverage. You can follow along with live timing and scoring by heading to RaceSpot.tv/timing, powered by our partners at ATVO. Follow along with your favorite team and drivers. Well, Paul, it's the iRacing special event. It's where community meets competition. It's not a team race today. It is an endurance race, though, 2.4 hours in length, and we're in for a treat because the GT4s join up with the TCRs and MX5s to go racing for 2.4 hours.
Yeah, hello everybody. It promises to be a very, very interesting race, does this one. Daytona is unique in how it races here in the world of endurance racing, and with this being a solo event, it's not the longest that a driver will ever do in driving a race, but still it is a real test of that driver's ability to keep the concentration up as well. We're going to see a lot of slipstreaming around here. There's going to be big battle packs, especially in the MX5s and the touring cars.
We might be in for not one but two photo finishes in those specific classes. Going back to the point though about it being a solo event, there's not many that we have the endurance races here on iRacing. The main other one is the VLN Endurance Series, where you can challenge yourself for 4 hours at the Nürburgring Nordschleife if you feel so inclined. But this is one where the community have been wanting this back. We missed it last year. It's not a race in real life necessarily. The Roar will take place in 7 days' time. It's a glorified test session for drivers in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. This kind of replicates what we see in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge, where of course the GT4s and the TCRs compete, but we throw in the MX-5 for some fun. You did a race last night, Paul. Talk to us about the chaos of that first time through traffic.
I mean, it's not just the first time through traffic, it's the start of the race as well. That run into turn one, it's not easy. When you're on cold tyres as well, things can check up a bit in there, so you've just got to be canny about it. It is a long race. But then, as you mentioned, that first run through traffic, it can really affect you out there. I myself got caught out in an incident, managed to keep it out the barriers, but unfortunately I fell to the back of the touring car pack. But that's the nature of this race. Events can happen, and you've just got to try and pick yourself up, not let it get to you, and just plod on and get back onto the back of that pack.
And so here's a look at the cars, the classes, and the balance of performance that we've got for today's event. Balance of performance, always a somewhat of dirty word when it comes to iRacing and the way things go, but from what we've seen, at least provisionally, it looks like TCR and GT4 might be interesting. However, the case has become that, like they do in most of these special events, Paul, they're almost single car classes in both GT4 and TCR today.
Well, I mean, you say that, but in the practice session just now, we've got one Honda in the top four, you've got one Audi in the top four, and two Hyundais. So there is a mix of touring cars here. That Audi, with that minus 1% power, it's really good on throttle out of the corners, really has good grunt and good torque out the corner, so I can see why it was just giving that little bit of a rein in. Was that car, and it's actually been very, very even, has the balance of performance. So I think that iRacing have done a fantastic job for this event myself.
And so here's where we're racing. The World Center of Racing, there's an airport just to the side, and we'll use almost the entirety of the 2.5 miles of banking here at the Daytona International Speedway. It is a track, Paul, which is deceptively difficult. The bumps on the infield make it quite tricky to get yourself turned in and slowed down in time for the corners, and you really can lose a whole bunch of time in that infield, given that you very much have to trim yourself out for the the NASCAR banking, where you need the top end speed, you need the downforce, you need the stability in the infield.
You certainly do, and it's that compromise that you've got to make. Now, for the GT4s, they're the ones who have got to worry about that wing angle. The touring cars, they can't adjust that wing angle. It's all about how much rake you give the car as to how much drag that you have on that vehicle. And the MX-5s, well, they don't have any aerodynamic devices, so they're pretty much stock as they are. But yeah, it's such a tricky track to get it. But once you get into a flow around here, it is good.
And so Paul took the time to go and walk us through this 3.5 mile facility with a lap on board in the TCR machines. Let's go right around the Daytona International Speedway.
So here with our then, going to take you on a lap around the 3.5 mile road course here at Daytona International. Get your run out of the bus stop chicane right, because you want to carry the speed all the way through NASCAR's turn 3 and 4, and then head yourself towards the tri-oval. That'll give you the best opportunity for an overtake down into turn 1 if you get your exit. You run through the bus stop chicane and exit to carry the speed. Slipstream and draft will be huge around here as well, especially here in this Hyundai TCR. Open up the entry into turn 1, brake nice and early, because the car wants to just squirrel away underneath you, and it's very easy to understeer out there. Turn 2 and turn 3, not really any corners. Then we go into the International Horseshoe, over to the left hand side, brake nice and early. You brake earlier than you expect to do. Careful with your throttle application on corner exit. And then flat out through the kink here. Through this left-hander. Flat out. No lift of the throttle. I go middle of the track here. I mean, I've missed my apex there, but you can pick it up on the exit of the right-hand hairpin. And then we've got the run back out onto the oval. And again, important to get your speed right. Carry the speed through this left-hander onto the oval. As you'd imagine, absolutely flat out 100% throttle through turns 1 and 2 of the banking. Up to 6th gear. The speed on my dash is in kilometres an hour, not in miles an hour, so we're over 230 kilometres an hour. Look out for between the 2 and the 1, then hit your brakes down to 4th gear. Back end wants to move around, that's good in the TCR. It gives you a lot of turning. You've got to be careful with the sausage curb on the final part of the bus stop chicane on the right hand side. It can kick the car and push it out wide. And then, as I say, absolutely flat out once again through turns 3 and 4. Keep it over to the left hand side for the shortest run to the line here. And there you go. That is a kind of hot lap around Daytona International Speedway. I did a 1:59.7. Depending on the weather, the top guys will be doing 57s, 58s in the TCR. So, hope you enjoyed that. And I hope that we have a very good race here in the Raw before the 24.
So qualifying is underway for the first of the iRacing special events. 8 minutes, you get the track to yourself, 2 flying laps to go as fast as you can when the pressure is on. But the reality is, Paul, qualifying here may be not as important as some of the other special events we'll have over the course of the year.
Yeah, because the draft is so strong around this track, you know, you don't want to be forging a path at the front of that pack. You want to be 2nd, 3rd, 4th even, just to get yourself fuel saving as much as possible. You look after your tyres as well, especially in the touring car class. You have to look after your front tyres, as we'll start getting the first few qualifying times coming up on screen momentarily. But yeah, it's a real challenge as this track, and you're quite right in saying that you don't necessarily have to qualify at the front.
So the GT4s have got laps on the board. The first of the TCRs, Carl Jansen for Core Sim Racing across the line and coming down into turn 1 for what will be lap number 2 for him. Still waiting, of course, for the MX-5s. We're talking about a 20-second, give or take, delta between the fastest of the GT4s and the fastest of the MX-5s. That first time through traffic likely to break up the packs, at least in GT4, from what we've seen in the races that have already taken place at breaking up for the MX-5s. Easier said than done. The first lap time to the MX-5 coming on in right now. We'll show you the times with 3 minutes left on the board. 1:52, the fastest lap time for Maxime Ramstein, for Kieran Harrison and the TCR. Also representing Core Sim Racing, 1:57.787. Pablo Espez with a 2:09.771. The lap times in MX-5 separated by not tenths of a second, but by hundreds and thousandths of a second. We got a pretty strong grid as well, Paul, given that this is an exhibition race, right? This is not one that necessarily the teams care about so much. We'll see Coanda, I'm pretty sure, in force next week in the 24 Hours of Daytona. Today is about going out there and having some fun. We've got World Championship drivers in the mix as well.
We certainly do, and we have got a 50-car grid as well, so that is a stacked field. There's 15 GT4s, 18 touring cars, and 17 Mazdas, so we've got a really good even split of cars out there, which is fantastic to see. And there's a few drivers who have yet to set a lap time. Now, you've got to be careful going through the bus stop chicane. It's so easy to pick up a slow down penalty through there, and then that directly affects your following lap.
Yeah, got 42 times set, so 8 cars have not put in at least a benchmark just yet. Bo Albert goes up into 7th position, still waiting for Daniel Ferguson and Guilherme Egloff in the GT4 category to put some lap times down. In TCR, Josh Bosch Thompson, Hugo Brandão, Jake Maloney, the 3 cars with no lap time being laid down just yet, and Simone Madoka in MX5, the only car not putting in a lap time there. It's fairly evenly distributed amongst the classes as well. You've got 15 GT4s, 18 TCRs, and then 17 MX5s. It's going to make traffic fun, and that's what this race is going to be about, Paul. Given the speed delta between the 3 classes, is traffic management.
Yes, it certainly is, and this is the thing. Those Mazdas, they all like to stay together as a group, and those touring cars like to stay together as a group as well, as what we found last night with the 10 p.m. Friday night race. So when you get that first run through the field, there can be a little bit of tripping over each other, but hopefully everybody works together here, and that's going to be the big key to this race for me, is working together with each other. Even though you're competing against each other out there, you've got to have that little bit of cooperation, or else 1 or 2 drivers will just waltz away at the front.
And let's quickly talk about strategy, Paul. For 2 of the classes, 1 pit stop, so not much danger in terms of messing up in the fuel cycle. For GT4, they'll come down twice.
Certainly will. You will see the GT4s fully fill their fuel tank once and then do a splash and dash towards the end. The MX5s and the touring cars, you're quite right in saying 1 fuel stop. With the touring cars, you'll just see the drivers taking front tyres only.
Well, with that said, qualifying is done. It is time to take a look at the starting grid for the first of the iRacing special events. We're ready to roar in Daytona for the iRacing Roar. And so on pole position, Maxime Ramstein for Core Sim Racing with a 152.692 puts it on the pole. 0.04 of a second behind him, Ion Gagnon Renault puts it on the outside of row number 1, while Jackson Suzlin Harlow and Tristan Iglesias 3rd and 4th positions. New member to the RaceSpot team, William Chadwick, lines up inside of Daniel Ferguson, while back on row 4, Pascal Stix and Spencer Kostowicz, 7th and 8th positions. Bo Albert and Juan Bustamante on the edge of the top 10, while Michael Yanni and Guilherme Egloff, 11th and 12th positions. Ross Woodford, Adam Isaacson on 13th and 14th, while Travis Schwenk, the last car in the GT4 field, 1.3 seconds separating the times in your fastest class of competition. Kieran Harrison, another Core Sim Racing driver, puts it on pole in TCR with a 157.787. A 10th behind him, it's a Core Sim Racing lockout of the front row. Corentin Gunez puts it in 2nd. Thomas Gibson, Carl Jansen, it's a core lockout in TCR 1 through 4, while Konstantin Stolzenberg and Kimo Sumonen 5th and 6th positions. Diogo Pinto, the red line driver, lines up in 7th alongside fellow World Championship competitor Bosch Thompson. Pablo Castro, always entertaining to see out there in the field. He'll be alongside Jack Cedric, rounding out the top 10. Roberto Ferrari, Jake Maloney, 11th and 12th positions, while David Baker, George Simmons, 13th and 14th, matching the lap times there, about 0.4 off the pace with Hugo Brandão, Kira Wolf, row number 8. Dylan Burrs, Manuel Olargo on row number 9, completing the TCR field, and will quickly cycle to the final class of competition where the lap times are separated by hundreds, if not thousands, of a second. Pablo Espes, Sonny Kanchin, 1st and 2nd, while Franco Canta and Yannick van der Zand, 3rd and 4th position, 1/10 separating the top 4, with David Pena and Jasper Reichen through the top 6. Shona Goto and Tom Voss, 7th and 8th positions, with Aruto Costas 9th, Tomoyasu Inatini, number 10th position, with Christoph Sanchez and Felix Voter, 11th and 12th positions. Rolling off in 12th, it will be Brad Wooten with Tom Raichi in 14th, Owen Carl, Simona Modica, and Franco Ruggeri through the 17 cars ready to roar here in Daytona. Paul, this is going to be fun. From a driver's perspective, how crucial is it going to be to keep it clean on the start?
Oh, it's crucial. Any amount of damage that you make to your car will slow you down on those straights, and because it is so much of this track is full power, full throttle, you will not want to pick up any damage at all. So keeping it clean is crucial, but also being safe and not losing the leaders is also key.
And one thing to remember, there is no split class start. When the green flag drops for the GT4s, the TCRs, the MX-5, they'll be underway in what will be a helter-skelter run down into turn number 1. But the pace car is ready to pull off the track. We are ready to roar for the first of the iRacing special events. The field is in control of Maxime Ramstein. We're racing in the 2022 iRacing Roar. Already they're going 4 wide in your GT4s as they thunder their way down in towards turn number 1. Looks like they're going to get through cleanly. Meanwhile, the TCR streaking across the line themselves. Look at the formation of core sim racing cars, almost locking out the top 5, working their way down into the International Horseshoe. Here comes the GT4. Nice clean start in the first 2 classes, Paul.
Yeah, that's a really key here.
No!
You say clean action. There's contact in the International Horseshoe. Hopefully they don't get caught up with the TCRs. The MX-5s as well. They've got up underway through here. 2 wide, pretty much 2 by 2 by 2, all the way through that field as well. But again, nice clean start for them as they head into the International Horseshoe now. So yeah, a little bit of action in GT4 that we saw. In fact, there's a spinner at the back of your MX-5s, but the rest of them, there's more contact as well in the mid-pack of the MX-5s. But everybody else keeping it nice and tidy.
Onto the banking for the first time. Here comes the GT4s that run down into the bus stop chicane. Is it going to be a passing opportunity? That's the question. Look at the MX-5 class though. 3 wide into the second hairpin. I can't wait to see after 2.4 hours of racing how close it will be. The one MX-5 that got mixed up into the International Horseshoe, that was Tomoyasu Inatani, the number 41 car that finds himself at the back through the bus stop for the very first time though. Here come the GT4 cars. That one BMW works its way up through the fields. The 5-star Motorsports Porsche looks to make it 3 wide. Not the smartest idea this early in the race.
No, as I said, you need to work together. I mean, this is where drivers will be trying to sort themselves out. I think that's actually a slowdown penalty as well for the Apex driver, so not the ideal way to end your first lap, but you do need to work together, be cooperative to be able to keep with the lead pack, because that lead pack has got a nice little gap now of about a second and a second and a quarter between Daniel Ferguson and then Guillaume Egloff.
Trying to break out of drafting range, but not fully done just yet. Ramstein leads the way from Jackson Suslin-Harlow and William Chadwick through the podium positions. Chadwick's had a pretty impressive start to this race, already up 2 positions. TCR's down into the International Horseshoe for the second time. This time by Josh Thompson is the one that's made a rocket of a start in this class, up 4 positions from where he qualified into the top 5. Now trying to work his way through the swarm of core sim racing cars, and I think that's going to be crucial, Paul. Having the teammates that are going to be able to work with you. Core sim racing in a pretty good position in this TCR class, although Diogo Pinto wants a lunge down the inside.
Yes, so that's it. You know, it's everyone versus core, and core sim racing wanting to have a good representation here. They want to lock out this touring car field. But yeah, as you mentioned, Josh Thompson, I mean, he's no stranger to a touring car, neither is Diogo Pinto, as working his way through that pack as well as the GT4 car of Michael Janet, who got involved in that incident at the International Horseshoe on lap 1. And that's going to be difficult for him. He'll be losing so much time, and the touring car drivers will want to cooperate, but also not want to cooperate because they don't want to lose their compatriots.
Here's a great shot in the air as the TCRs come through the bus stop chicane. Of course, on the outside of the right-hand curb on the exit is a anti-cut curb, which was breaking some of the cars, if we could put it that way. iRacing updated the track, so that's not as much of a factor anymore, but it's very easy to hook yourself on that curb, lose some momentum, lose some time. And speaking of losing time, Michael Yanni's going to have to pick his way past these cars one by one. The Apex Racing Academy driver needs to make sure he keeps out of trouble. Looks like William Chadwick might have just been passed by the big green machine of Tristan Iglesias as they come down into turn number 3 once more. On the outside is the Maniti car. Chadwick will defend and hold that inside line. That BMW is starting to lose the train though. The gap between Ferguson and Egloff has closed on up. Now Travis Schwenk, 1.8 seconds behind 9th place Adam Isaacson.
Yeah, and that's, as I say, that front pack in this GT4s have been able to break away. and it's just left the rest of them fighting amongst themselves. And the problem with that is you then start tripping over each other. You want to try and sort of maybe cooperate and get a drafting partnership going where you swap positions each drafting opportunity to try and pull yourselves forward in that, but you just end up tripping over each other and slowing each other down rather than trying to get back onto the back of that field. Great battle for the lead of your MX-5s, and Sonny Kanchin doing a sterling job at the front of that field, but Van der Zande and Pinea are certainly keeping him honest here.
Yeah, where do you even want to look with this MX-5 class? The reality is they're going to be pretty much in a blanket before they get to that first pass of traffic, and then after that it's still somewhat likely that they'll be close with one another as they work themselves down into this second hairpin. The GT4 leaders still yet to come out of NASCAR Turn 4, so we're still looking at maybe 3 laps or so before that traffic overlap really begins to build, so I would not be entirely shocked if it takes a while for that first pass of traffic to become a big factor. In the TCR class, though, bit of separation trying to form. Samuel Aurora calls us totally chaotic racing. Not so chaotic when 3rd and 4th positions are separated by 1.4 seconds.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit down to that GT4 working its way around. There's a car around. That's Sermon, isn't it? Either way, done a fantastic job to keep it going. Fortunately for him, there's a lot of asphalt there to the left-hand side. But this is one of the problems. People try and bump draft each other to push them forward. But with these touring cars, the back end, it has very little weight to it, and it can just then end up turning the car around.
Here's a look at the replay of what happened there. Oh yeah, he's just hooked up. That's bump drafting, and almost to the point where NASCAR wouldn't allow it because they do have rules about it. It's not like it's a total free-for-all. Good car control, maybe just getting on the power, using the front-wheel drive nature of that TCR machine. One of the Core Sim Racing cars bundled off the road. Kimmo Suominen still in the leading pack because all 18 cars are still separated by a blanket in the TCR class, but very much now has a lot of work to do to close back up to the front where he was fighting earlier in the race. Look at this though with the MX-5s. This is what we love. 2 wide, almost 3 deep in towards turn number 1. I just hope the GT4s are gentle when they come around and pass these guys for the very first time.
Well, we're going to have a few more laps yet before the GT4s get to those MX-5s, so I think we're going to be about 3, maybe 4 laps at the most before the GT4 start working their way through there. But yeah, you've got 16 of the 17 MX-5s all together, all trying to fight over the same piece of asphalt. And I mean, this is what we come to expect of these MX-5s. We see it in the real world at Mazda series as well, don't we, with those photo finishes each and every time. It's just tremendous racing for those Mazdas.
Tristan Iglesias tries to go the long way around turn number 1. Almost had the lead for a moment, but might slip back into 4th where he was starting this lap. He'll be side by side with Chadwick as they come down into the first of the right-hand hairpins. He'll have the apex. He'll get the run off the corner. Should slide his way up into the podium positions. That Team Fordzilla machine trying to hold on, but has to slot back into line. Always weird when you commentate on a Team Fordzilla car in not a Ford. But we'll gloss past that and we'll go back to some of the action on the start. We'll begin with what happened in the GT4s as they came down in towards the International Horseshoe for the very first time. That's Bo Albert, isn't that?
I mean, it was the Logitech G Altus Esports truck car, and seeing as Bo is the other one out there, yes, it was. The thing is, he's got a car to his inside, so he's trying to give space, and then gets into the back of the Vendaval car, and ends up taking out the Apex Racing Academy car as well. So, not the smartest of times through there. And here's what happened as well to Inatani.
It's hard, isn't it?
Yes, especially when you've only woken up about an hour and a half ago. But yeah, down into the International Horseshoe, there's a bit of a check-up. And well, certain...
there was a lot of air. That's the word.
Yes,
that's
there was
the
a
phrase.
lot of air. Yes. We have lost Brad Wotton from the MX-5s. He's on pit road right now. So he's the first of the cars. And this could be why. Yeah, that's... Forgetting your braking point, I think is what I'd call it. He lost a wheel in all of that as well.
That was Owen Carlo, I must say, had a pretty splendid car. We won't get a look at that too much, but just watch here. Doesn't just lose the braking zone, plows into the rear of Owen Carl, the driver that's usually in LMP2 machinery, and wow, that is a big contact. That will indeed be, I believe, the first retirement of the race, because no fast repairs today, Paul.
No, none at all. So you have to spend your time on pit road, and if you have to get suspension damage there is fixed, then you're going to be sat there for a little while. To reattach an entire suspension assembly, well, good luck. You might as well finish off your race and pack up for the day.
Outside line, is this where you want to be, Paul, with these TCR cars into turn one? Though there's a bit of bumping going on there. Thomas Gibson controls the car. I think contact from Josh Thompson in the swarm of Hyundai liveried machines. That's the factory machine livery there that you're seeing. Not the easiest to tell who is who, but Diogo Pinto, I think, alongside with Josh Thompson.
He is, and again, you've got to, Thompson was trying to go around the outside. It's not the ideal move, is that one at the turn number one, but you've got to expect a little bit of space to be given by that core sim racing car of Thomas Gibson as well. There's got to be a bit of that. By the way, I can tell you that your GT4s have now reached the first of your MX-5 pack markers.
Well, let's take a look at that. Here we go. It's not as intimidating as when you get the P2 machines coming past the GTDs necessarily, given the higher speeds involved there. But when you're in a car like the MX-5, there's only so much you can do as they go down low. They go down below the yellow line. One of the Vendaval cars followed by Maniti, Jackson Suslin Harlow, taking advantage of all of the track on the inside, track on the outside being used as well. This is going to get chaotic. Still plenty of time to go as Pascal Stix goes deep into turn number one.
And if people are saying, well, hang on a second, he went below onto the apron there, you can actually do that. It has been decided you can do that on the tri-oval. However, if you then cause an accident by trying to force your way back on, you will be found at fault. So it's risky, and I think they didn't really have a lot of choices when you started having MX-5s going too wide.
Yeah, I think not much choices. They now go to the outside of the kink, where if you go side by side in other classes, you'll be scared. Oh, there's bumper cars being played there as well between the leader, Maxime Ramstam, and Jackson Suslin Harlow, now ducking and diving, carving their way through the traffic. This is when traffic management skills come to the fore. The drivers that have learned the patience, learned the art of finding the right opportunity, 3 wide onto the banking once more, just as crazy as we suspected.
Yeah, this is absolutely bonkers, is this. You see, you mentioned about the LMP2s and the speed that they have. The thing is, you've got a huge speed differential between the GT4s and the MX-5, so it can almost be as similar, if not a worse, disparity between the two. So, yeah, the GT4s, they've managed to work their way through pretty much everyone. The leaders certainly have cleared the MX-5 leaders. Now there's just the stragglers in GT4 trying to work their way through. But yes, you're absolutely right. If you know how to work traffic, and if you have that patience or that innate ability to just see a gap open up and be able to read the other people's minds, then you are going to do so well here. Harlow's going up to the lead, and Ramstein, I think he's just happy just to sit behind, maybe get a little bit of fuel saving.
And it hasn't really, that first pass through traffic hasn't really broken up the GT4s as much as I maybe thought it might. You can see as they come down through turn number one, all the way back to 9th place. Adam Isaacson in the 5-Star Motorsports Porsche does look as though they're looking healthy, at least for the time being. Something's happened down to one of the MX-5s who found himself back on pit lane. That's the 49 of Tom Raichi. I think Michael Yanni might have been involved. Of course, Yanni was the Apex Racing car that found himself having to carve his way up through the field. Here come the TCRs once more, storming down across the start-finish line. Popping out is Diogo Pinto, covered off by Corentin Gunes, who will play the team game to try and make life easy, but Pinto will go down low to the inside line and to the race lead. Diogo Pinto leads in TCR.
But if you're the core drivers, you're not too worried about that, because you can sit behind now, use that slipstream of Pinto, and get yourself some fuel saving. Maybe get yourself an extra lap of fuel if you just stay behind all the way along, rather than breaking the hull in the air for the rest of the field. But that whole TCR field is covered by 4.5 seconds. Oh, big crash there. That's the replay of what happened. And that's what happens when you quarter panel somebody.
Yes, I thought for a moment Yanni might have been involved because he'd been indicated as going off track, but no, it wasn't. GT4's wrecking the MX-5s instead. It was just self-inflicted wound in that MX-5 class. But poor Tom Raichi, I think that might be day done as well, because that was a hefty blow into the walls at speed as well. Coming back onto the banking, here come the TCR cars. The core stranglehold at the front has been broken, and Ramstein might be bundled down in GT4 as well. The big green machine of Tristan Iglesias sweeps around the outside and to the race lead. Our third race leader so far in GT4.
Yeah, this is just absolutely fantastic. And this is what we fully expected from this event, isn't it? We expected just plenty of lead changes, plenty of pack racing. It's certainly providing that for us here today so far, so I hope you are enjoying this, because I certainly am. But yeah, this lead group of 9 GT4s at the front of the field, they are just all together. If I'm sort of 6th, 7th and 8th, I'm just hoping that the cars in front of me don't make a mistake and cause there to be a gap, and just sit there, do some fuel saving, because as we mentioned, these GT4s, they do have to splash and dash towards the end. The most fuel saving that you can do now is going to help you towards the end of the race.
Oh, absolutely. This is the second group of GT4s, by the way, that is somewhat being left in the dust of the rest of the field. The one BMW coming under fire from Ross Woodford, and the Vendeval car that got turned around on lap number 1. Still a long way to go as the TCR's duking it out once more. Here comes Kieran Harrison, who has gotten past he was in front of Karan Tangunas to begin with anyway, but is now still trying to fight his way back on through on Diogo Pinto. And I think in a race like this, fuel saving might be some important. You talked about how these TCRs will only take front tires, how they'll only come down for one pit stop in today's race pool. If you can minimize the amount of fuel that you take onto your car, it might be a good way to undercut the field and to try and build up some advantage, break out of the draft, which is oh so strong in TCR.
Yeah, you're a 100-litre fuel tank on these TCRs. It takes about 54 seconds for you to fully fill that tank, so you're talking about 1.8 litres per second. There's a little bit of bump drafting going on with Pinto at the front. If you can, say, get an extra lap out of your car and therefore have to save yourself maybe 2 litres of fuel, that's a second and a half on pit road that you're saving there. So every little bit will help as we've got moving further down in that TCR field as well. Cars trying to work their way through into the bus stop chicane. It's not always the best idea to make the move into the bus stop. You want to try and get the run out of that corner. As in fact, we've got a car down low in that mid-pack trying to force its way through. And Pinto is changing line left and right. He's gone high, and now the core car will go through.
Yeah. Oh, no, he won't. There's going to be huge contact at the front. Diogo Pinto mixed up with Kieran Harrison. Your pole position sitter rolling backwards down the main straightaway.
Well, fortunately for him, there's pit entry. He could get himself onto pit road, but I think that's going to be his race run. But all of a sudden now, we see that Corentin Gunness and Josh Thompson at the front of the field. So they're getting to the MX-5s now as well. So these TCRs, my goodness, what on earth happened between the two of them? Was that Pinto coming down or Harrison coming up? That's Pinto coming down for me.
And can I call that an uncharacteristic mistake from a World Championship driver that was so impressive in your Porsche Carrera Cup Deutschland? We'll grab a look on board with Diogo Pinto. Just watch here. He opens up the steering. I thought for a second maybe he had a slowdown penalty, but he just hooks onto Kieran Harrison here.
Yeah, and because there's so little weight over the rear wheels on these touring cars, it's so easy to quarter panel the car and just send it round. But here we go. Here's the MX-5s. Poor MX-5s now getting bullied by the big cars of the touring cars. So the front two have managed to work it nicely and got a little bit of a gap, a little bit of a separation over the rest of the touring car field.
I tell you what, though, in the MX-5 class, it's been impressive that David Pena has taken advantage of the traffic to put himself in the right positions, broke away about 1.5 seconds when the GT4s came through, was reeled back in, but they're going crazy. They are going absolutely insane on the entry into the bus stop as the TCRs try and avoid losing time behind those MX-5 machines. I saw 3 wide on the entry, fortunately not 3 wide on the exit.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Those MX-5s, they don't want to lose time either. They're involved in their own fight. I mean, there's still 10 of them all in a queue together in that MX-5 class at the front of that field. So they're wanting to keep together with each other. There you see them, right there on screen. They're about to get caught by those touring cars. Hopefully, it doesn't separate this up. But if you're the touring cars and you're seeing these cars going 2-3 wide into turn 1, you'll be thinking, oh boy, what have I got myself into?
Yeah, what did I sign up for? I think that's the way to put it. George Simmons has had a big off. The Apex driver now resets back to pit lane instantly. Lights flashing from the TCRs to say, I'm the faster car, get out of my way. But just like Paul was saying, these are drivers running their own race. They're going to have to be careful here, though, because the TCRs are going to overlap them in this crucial infield section, and Corentin Gunes, the race leader, has nowhere to go as he gets boxed out by the MX-5 cars.
He's going to try and bully his way through. That's what he's going to try and do here. Corner exit, this touring car is so much better on the power. Okay, it does understeer a little bit if you get too much on the throttle out of these hairpins, but it has so much more power than that MX-5. The MX-5 is very much a momentum car, and when you go into hairpins like the International Horseshoes, you just lose that momentum. Here's what happened to George Simmons, and that's coming through the tri-oval.
That's technical.
That's a wheel failure, that.
Yeah, that's a technical. Jump on board, watch the steering here for Mr. George Simmons. Just watch as that car drifts up. Oh!
Yeah, that's a wheel failure.
Is that wheel failure, or was that just him not paying attention for a second? I think you're right, it was wheel failure. It looks odd, but now you can see the steering is basically fixed in one position.
His virtual reality has died. He got a black virtual reality screen.
Yeah, something like that. Something for sure has happened there.
No, he's actually said in the session, so...
oh, okay. Yeah. Down on pit lane, Paul
Smith
away, everywhere.
So, it's unfortunate, but this is it. You can equate that to real-life motorsport. You know, real-life motorsport, you end up with technical difficulties as well. So these things happen, unfortunately.
So he's retired. Bo Albert, I think, is also retired in the GT4 class as well. So we've got 2 retirements, about, what, 20-odd minutes into this race to add to the couple of cars in MX-5 that have had issues early on. Kieran Harrison, Diogo Pinto came together as well, being a mix-up at the front of the MX-5 field as they come down in towards turn number 1. Arturo Costas mixed up with David Penny. We'll get a look at the replay in a couple of moments' time, but those were 2 cars fighting at the front of the MX-5 field.
Yeah, and this is it. You know, you're going to be getting involved in instance. Here we go. Here's a look into turn 1, and yeah, it just pinches down, and 2 of them end up around the Zenith car, getting back up underway. But yeah, that it's a tricky corner is turn 1, because you do get that grass kick out, and he's just carried a little bit too much speed, got into the back of him, and then around he goes.
So easy to do in a momentum-based car as well, where you're really trying to just wring the neck of the car and make sure you've got as much speed as possible. Does mean a bit of breakup in the MX-5 class now. First and second separated by 0.4, then 1.2 back to Franco Canta in third. Don't think it'll be long, though, before this closes back up and we'll get potentially another 9-car train. 10th place David Pena, now 5 and a bit seconds back from the next car in line. Jackson Susan Harlow has been bundled down into 4th position in the GT4s. William Chadwick has cycled up to 2nd. Ramstein's down in 3rd. Gagnon Renault rounds out the top 5 here. 20-odd minutes done. And we said that these drivers would need a splash and dash at the end, Paul. Would you think that in a train like this, we've still got 9 cars in this lead breakaway, could anyone be brave enough to try and save some fuel and try and avoid that splash and dash?
No, not with it. Oh, that's a big one. That's the Craig setup shop car. That's Jack Sedgwick, who's into the wall. My goodness, it's all happening in TCR, isn't it? What on earth has happened to Jack there? We'll get back to that point about the GT4s in a bit, because, again, I think people are just being overly keen on the bump drafting here, potentially. Let's find out. Oh, the Hyundai has gone to... Oh, they've both gone to the apron. And this is the problem. Fortunately, nobody else collected in that incident. It just ends up being Jack Sedgwick. But that's... You see, that's where Jack is too busy looking forward, and he's not seen the Hyundai go to the apron behind him.
Yeah, now you can put some blame on that other car, but it should also be said that Jack does try and cover off quite late that run from the inside line, so somewhat initiated the contact there.
It's well, basically, as I say, Jack has just got his eyes forward. He's looking at that car in front. He's then got he had a run. He was trying to then take advantage of that into turn one when there's a car already there. So unfortunately, it's unfortunate that that sort of thing can happen. But again, it was a quarter panel on that touring car, sends it around.
Second pass through for the GT4s on the MX-5 cars as they come back onto the banking. Bit of separation between second and third. Still, though, 9 cars split by 3 seconds in this GT4 class. Separation forming in the TCRs. Pablo Castro in 5th, separated by about 2.4 seconds back on Dylan Burst. So that's basically out of drafting range. It's going to take some effort for Dylan Burst to really close. And I tell you what, he is getting an assist from behind. As you look on the right side of the screen, Burst getting bumped down in towards turn number 1 by Roberto Ferrari. Given what we've seen in the recent moments, though, a little bit scary when you see something like that. Fight for the race lead, though, closing up as Chadwick uses the draft to suck himself up to the back of Iglesias. But here comes Ramstein as well.
Yeah, Ramstein got the double draft, and we've got the MX-5s again. So they've reached the, as they say in America, the Miatas. And we've got 2 wide in the MX-5s, and the GT4s making it almost 4 wide there. Ramstein came off worst there because he was on the high line and had nowhere to go.
I think he got into the wall there, and now he'll get bumped off into the grass by one of the MX-5's cars. Absolute chaos as they come down into the International Horseshoe. Jackson Susan Harlow is off the road as well. This second pass through from the GT4s on the MX-5, even more chaotic than the first one.
Yeah, it's almost as if the MX-5s weren't expecting it this soon, and they're just all getting caught out here in this battling. We've got a mirror hanging off of Ramstein's car. That's from touching the wall. You are right there, Arjuna. He did hit the wall on the outside in towards turn number 1, so the door mirror is hanging off. Now, I normally say that if you're driving a touring car and the mirror's still attached, then you're not trying. Well, Maxim's decided to take that to the GT4s.
Now the question is, how hard did he get into the wall? Did he brush it enough to dislodge that mirror, or was it a bit more significant? Is Ramstein now going to feel the pain for what is going to be a long old 2 hours if that car has significant damage?
I think he may lose about 1 kilometre, 2 kilometres an hour overall out-and-out top speed. And that could be the difference between winning this race and not. So he's got to try and keep in the draft there. And, you know, certainly keep with those leaders, because if they're not careful, William Chadwick and Tristan Iglesias can certainly make a breakaway here.
So 2 cars. Chadwick using the bumper to push along the big green Maniti machine. Meanwhile, in your TCR, still a 5-car breakaway. Dylan Burst in the Vendaval car trying to close down. Dylan is one who drives a Hyundai in the real world. He drives races in some local, what's it called, Hyundai Excels or something like that in Australia. Interestingly enough, he's one of the few Audis in the field still left and running, representing the 4 rings, as here comes the battle for the MX-5 lead. Franco Cantor on the outside concedes the position for now. It is a bit of a 6-car breakaway because Shono Guto and Christoph Sanchez, as they duke it out side by side, they're 2.9 seconds back from the leader. It's going to take some work for them to close back up. I think we might be looking at now that breakaway beginning to just stretch their legs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at like the average lap times. So I've got on my timing screen, I've got the average 5 lap times up here, and that front pack in the MX-5s, they're all running pretty much the same lap times, but then 7th, 8th and 9th are together, Sanchez, Goto and Votta, they're about half a second a lap slower on average. Your GT4s, well, they're pretty much even in the front 4. And then you're talking about the gap between 4th and 5th place. The average lap times is about 0.4 of a second difference in the last 5 laps. So it shows not being in that draft, not being right in that pack, really does affect your lap times. And it's, again, similar story in the TCRs as well, with the first 5 making that breakaway and that second gaggle just slowly losing touch.
Well, there is that second gaggle as bit of a push coming from Constantin Stolzenberg for Roberto Ferrari as they clear on Dylan Burrs, who dives it deep into the corner. 5 cars at the front of the queue, and then the rest of the field basically split by 10. So 6th through 13th trying to chase down the battle for the lead as into turn 1. Here come the GT4 leaders. Jackson Suzlin Harlow, losing touch of Ian Gagnon Renault. 2 Porsches there, so 2 trains in TCR, 2 trains beginning to form in the GT4 as well. And we're only about 16 laps into this race, an estimated 76 laps in today's racing action. And a reminder as well, if you're enjoying what you're seeing and you're not already a member of the iRacing service, join us at iRacing.com. The Rolex 24, the iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona kicks off in 7 days' time. Always one of the biggest events of the year. Last year, the main time slot had 10,000 drivers. Yes, it ended up having a bit of a weather delay, but Paul, you're seeing something on track.
Well, what I am seeing, I'm looking at my track map, the GT4s are getting closer and closer to the back of the touring cars. So now we're going to see the first time of the GT4s trying to work their way through the touring cars. The lap time difference between those cars is about 6 seconds, 5-6 seconds a lap. So really, it's going to be a bit more difficult for those GT4s to work their way past that touring car field.
Yeah, that's one car who is being left in the dust, I believe.
Jake Maloney.
Yeah, Jake Maloney in 31. Not sure what happened to him and why he's so much off the pace. Yes, he's out of the draft, which makes it difficult to kind of get a good indication, but I'm a little bit shocked there to see just how far off the pace he is. We'll see if the TCR car can help some of the cars. Jackson Suzlin Harlow, for example, draft back up to the leading group, but William Chadwick now loses touch very slightly, gets an assist from Maxime Ramstein, a pole position winner, as Gagnon Renault, the Pure Sims driver, trying to elect and figure out which way he wants to go. You can see on the bottom right portion in that track map, Paul is right, TCR cars coming into the horseshoe. What's it like for a TCR driver, Paul, when the GT4s come through, remembering there's only about 6 seconds difference in terms of the pace?
I mean, real. If you're at the back of that pack, it's a little bit easier for you because you can see them coming, and as well as if you've got a spotter working with you, they'll be there, right? Okay, GT4's 4 seconds back or whatever, giving you that information. If you're in the middle of a queue of cars, and you've got no spotter working with you, that can come as a big shock to you that all of a sudden, oh, hang on a second, we've got some fast cars coming through, and before you know it, you're losing touch on your compatriots. So it's really difficult, and it's really difficult for those GT4s to try and work their way through when you've got touring cars that are battling away.
I know how much you love a good pun, Paul. So David Haynes has decided to...
Yeah, I've seen.
Yeah, so Jake Maloney. Give us an out of 10 rating for that one.
I think you know what that with the contempt it deserves. But,
not even going to dignify it with a response.
It's a solid 4 out of 7.
Great to have fellow RaceSpot commentator David Haynes watching along, and hopefully David will join us next week for the Rolex 24. But we'll get a good aerial look here as cutting through the TCRs. Here come the GT4s. Will this break up the GT4 pack? That's the question I really have here.
Will it break up the TCR field as well? That's another question. Yeah, both battles for the lead are just as important as each other. even the MX-5s, you know, that's an important battle for them as well. And well, your GT4s just getting stuck and trapped behind, and the two sets of cars, they do corner at a pretty similar pace. Touring cars can brake a little bit later than the GT4s. Pretty similar pace through those at slower speed corners, but it's corner exit and then the overall top speed and power of those GT4s that gives them the edge over those touring cars.
Watch the Manini car as he looks to the inside in through the kink. That scared me. That scared me big time. That is not where you want to try and look to the inside of a front wheel drive that is always going to understeer. Needs to get turned in as aggressively as possible. Chadwick takes advantage, closes the gap up to your race leader as they come back onto the banking once more. Bumper cars being played across the classes now. Around comes the core sim racing car of Ramstein. Here comes Jackson Suslin Harlow as well. Gagnon Renault has been swarmed here. He's lost a position. And I tell you what, it is not broken up the GT4 pack, it has closed it up.
Yeah, it can exactly, can have that effect as well, can traffic. You do get the benefits and disadvantages of traffic as, oh my goodness, 3 cars bump drafting in your GT4s. We've got dive bombs going on happening into the bus stop chicane as well. It's not the wisest of moves to do, is that's for sure. But these GT4s, they are on edge, and you can see the damage actually to the front of that 28 car, and Egloff certainly has a little bit of front end damage that might affect him further into this race.
That was a bit scary. That was pretty scary. On the race leaders, by the way, in TCR, here come the train building. Top 3 in TCR still separated by about half a second in total as, deep into the braking zone, Jackson Suslin Harlow didn't want to repeat what he had with the MX-5s when he got forced off into the grass, lights flashing from the TCR cars, not always appreciating what they see from the faster cars coming through to lap them, but that's the nature of multi-class racing. The dangers of multi-class traffic. One of the GT4 cars trying to get an up and under going on there. Gagnon Renault splits the difference 3 wide in towards the kink.
Oh, you don't really like seeing that going in towards the kink. The two GT4. Oh, that's a bit of a dive bomb, and that was always going to happen. As soon as the 28 went and dive bombed down the inside of the touring car didn't want contact with them, but unfortunately they went and collect the Pure Sims car instead.
Yeah, there's not much that TCR I think really could have done. We'll grab a replay if we can and take a look here, just into the braking zone. Gagnon Renault does the right thing. Going to the outside is the preferred line, and that core sim racing TCR just got spooked. Puts it mildly, but it's so easy to do when you're in this crazy of a situation.
The thing is that GT4 that's going to the inside is coming from a long way back there. That is a move that's a bit risky, especially when you can see in front. The thing is, when you're making a move, you can see what's happening in front of you, and unfortunately, Ian Gagnon Renault is the innocent party in all of that.
Well, another one bites the dust, but at least for now, Gagnon Renault still out there and racing. I think Pascal Stix might have got a slowdown out of the bus stop penalty. He gets passed by Guillaume Egloff. That's 5th position. Top 4 are broken away now. 3.4 seconds splits 4th and 5th positions. To the outside pops Daniel Ferguson. He'll move himself up into the top 5, but they've got work to do. They'll need to use the traffic to their advantage if they want to try and fight for the race lead when things are said and done. Let's check in with the TCRs, because guess what, Paul? It's closed up.
Shock horror. There's 7 cars all together, all covered by 3 seconds at the moment. Pretty much everyone in TCR bar Jake Maloney are covered by 7 seconds. So it's still a long queue of cars, is that touring car field, and both them and the GT4s are actually catching up to the MX-5s again. So pretty much everybody's on nearly the same part of the track, so you can see you've got all of this track to use, you've got all this 3.6 miles to use, and we're all just on using the same bit. It's kind of like qualifying at Monza.
Oh, let's not talk about that, because I'm just going to start ranting. I'll ask you, Paul, given what you saw yesterday in your race, are we ever going to see the entire track being used, or are we really in for a show where the cars are really just in queues. They're basically holding station and waiting for opportunities at the end of the race.
I think when you get the pit stops happen, that's when you will get a little bit more separation between the cars. The GT4s will be the first ones to come in around about 20 minutes time, so we'll be keeping an eye on that here on RaceSpotTV. But the touring cars will be the last ones onto pit road from what I found in yesterday's race. But it's not until you get that pit stop happen that you start getting that little bit of separation, because those pit stops, you have that variation there, you know, in terms of the amount of fuel that people are putting in and how quickly they are onto pit road. Of course, one thing we've got to remember about pit road now, pit road exit, the speed limiter, is now around turn 1 as it is in real life.
Yeah, no, it's a long old hold that you do, and it helps in two ways. In safety terms, it helps you from bobbling back out onto track. I've seen that before in the past in some of the iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona. In the real world, it's more used for the RFID tracking system, which they have in place for the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, which helps track which tires are on which car at what point in time. It's a really impressive system when you think about that. A system that was copied over from the World Endurance Championship, and of course, 2 weeks from now, it kicks off the start of the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Yes, the first endurance race took place today, or yesterday, the 24 Hours of Dubai in the 24 Hours series, the Creventic Endurance Championship. But that's when endurance racing kicks off in earnest, when the top stars show up here in Daytona, all fighting for their own Rolex to add to the collection. 22 laps so far for the GT4s. As Paul said, we're getting close. The word that we had was anywhere from 32 to 36 laps was the fuel window for the GT4s, depending on which car you're in, which how much fuel saving you do as well. A bit of a change to what we saw a couple of years ago when the GT4s first launched, when the fuel stints were anywhere up to about 90 minutes in these GT4s, kind of what we see from TCRs, but now that's been brought back in by the iRacing overlords. GT4s going an hour bit longer in today's trim. What are the shocks that we've had so far in this race from your perspective, Paul?
I mean, what some people might find as a shock is just how close together these packs still are out there on track. I mean, fortunately for me, because I did race last night, I'm not surprised by that, because of how these cars are quite evenly matched in terms of their balance of performance, and also with the draft here. What's shocked me really is actually some of the incidents that we've seen going on into the tri-oval, not just in your MX-5 but also in your touring cars as well. Those sorts of incidents should not be happening, and these drivers should really know a little bit better than what they have been doing. So yeah, that's been really the main sort of point that I would say is a little bit of a bone of contention for me. That really, you know, it's a 2.4 hour race. You've got a long race to go. You don't need to fight tooth and nail for every position on every corner.
Having said that, though, I recall some of the things that we saw last year, Paul, at the 24 Hours of Daytona. If you're, if you're shocked by what you saw today, it's probably a good thing that you're racing next week and you're not going to be watching on in shock and horror at some of the lunges that we are bound to see in a new two-car format for the 24 Hours of Daytona, mirroring what we'll see in the real-world IMSA series this year. GTLM, GTE has fallen by the wayside. Full focus is on the GT3s. Yeah, and, you know, GTE served a purpose. You know, it had a purpose at a time. It's a little bit like GT1, isn't it? How that ran its course and served a purpose for its time. We've always got to evolve. We've always got to move forward. And getting those LMP2s and GT3s out there on track will certainly be really interesting to watch next week. That is for sure. And you know, how that all pans out for them in that race. Again, you're always going to have
people who will throw a dive down the inside and a late move out there. There will always be people who do that in whatever form of endurance racing. We see it in the real world as well, that there are some questionable moves made by cars and drivers because they're in a quote-unquote faster car. At the end of the day, with an endurance race, there's a little bit of safety needs to come into it as well, and looking after yourself as we cling on to the side of the core sim racing car as it works its way past the MX-5 field here in the touring cars.
Quarantine Guinness has taken advantage of the second pass through of the MX-5s in TCR. He's 2 seconds clear of Josh Thompson, Thomas Gibson, Carl Jansen, who are riding on board with now, and Pablo Castro through the top 5. And remember, 11 cars. In fact, now we're at 13 cars still in this leading group. Yes, there's separation between Guinness and Thompson, but given that Guinness has lost any sort of semblance of draft, will we see that gap close back up once more? Look at how close down to the yellow line they try and go, minimize the distance around the track and use the banking to their advantage. Carl Jansen, is he flashing the lights as his own teammate?
Yeah. There'll be a little bit of communication going on between them. If they're not in a Discord server or a TeamSpeak server or whatever, then they'll be using the flash of the headlights. I mean, heck, in real-world motorsport, I've seen the use of windscreen wipers as a form of communication before, in the Clio Cup a few years ago. So
how does that work?
It's basically the car behind uses its windscreen wipers to basically say to the car in front, it was basically two teammates who were working together at a drafting track to get away from everybody, and they were just, right, okay, it's my turn to go to the front, and they drafted past, and they kept on doing that until the last lap when they came together.
As one tends to do in the Clio Cup.
Yeah, absolutely, but you wouldn't expect anything less. But yeah, if they're not in the same chat, or if one of them can't hear the other, use the headlights. It's a form of communication. It can either signal your intent that you are going to make a move, or it can be a signal of annoyance that somebody's driving. It has many uses.
It's a flexible tool of communication, that's for sure. And while we watch the TCR cars, Paul, as our resident touring car lover here at RaceSpotTV, I've got to ask you just how happy you are to finally have some company for the Audi RS3.
It's seen a real resurgence in the touring cars. I think people were just, after 2.5 years of just the Audi RS3 LMS, I think people were just starting to fall by the wayside and go off to do other things. But now that we've got both the Hyundai and the Honda Civic, I think it's seen a real reinvigoration of the touring car field, and it just gives that bit of variety. Each car has its strengths and weaknesses. People will discuss in the touring car community about, oh, well, I think that car's too overpowered, or I think this car's too overpowered. When you look at them throughout a season of, like the Touring Car Challenge, for example, which is the fixed setup series that these cars race in, it balances out throughout the season as to how the different cars handle at the different tracks. It's fantastic. And RaceSpotTV, of course, are going to be broadcasting a private league of touring cars, the World Touring Car Series, starting Thursday night.
I heard a certain Paul Smith is going to be driving in that one.
Certain Paul Smith is driving in that one, yes.
So, should we be scared for you or scared for your competitors? Which way do we go with this?
I would say for me. My competitors would say
is there a... how they have the quote, those that can... that don't... what's it?
Those that can do, those that can't talk about it.
Yeah, well, something like that. I guess you're straddling the lines of both.
I mean, some would argue that I can't do commentary or racing, but there you go, that's that one. But no, it's going to be a fun series, is that one. I'm really looking forward to it, and if you do like touring car racing, everybody, I do strongly suggest that you watch that on RaceSpotTV. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with that and all of our other broadcasts. You see that? I'm keeping it on brand.
Yeah, I know you're giving the plug as well. Hit that bell once you subscribe so that you get notified every time we go live as well. World Touring Car Championship starts this coming Thursday.
Yes, this Thursday.
Not far away. Reminds me, I have a spinny wheel to go build.
Yeah, good luck with that. Meanwhile, looking to build on their race up at the front here. Linus Sebastian would be proud of that segue. The GT4s at the front here. They've still got this group of 4 together. Now, those 4 have actually, when I look at my timing screen, and by the way, RaceSpotTV/timing to keep up to date with everything going on in this race, they've managed to get about a 6.5 second lead between Tristan Iglesias and then 5th place, which was Pascal Sticks. So they've managed to make that breakaway of this front 4. This really is the group of cars, unless it's a big incident, I think this is the group of cars where we will see the overall race winner from.
Now you say that, and given that these drivers are going to have 2 trips down onto pit lane, the reality is it's not an easy pit lane to get down to. It is a high-speed entry coming off the banking. I guess you don't necessarily come off the banking here like you do at some other ovals. But it is a fairly bumpy entry into pit lane in a GT4 car, which it's got ABS, but ideally you stay out of it. So it'll be interesting to see as we approach that pit stop window, only 4 or 5 laps away from seeing potential stops in the GT4s. What will happen there? Meanwhile, 3 wide across the line in MX-5s. Preview of what we're hoping we'll see coming to the checkered flag. Sonny Kanchin to the race lead. He's got Pablo Espez on his inside for Obsidian Racing. Jasper Eichen, Franco Canta, and Tom Voss complete the top 5 in what is a 6-car breakaway from the rest of the field. Just like in GT4s, 6 seconds separates the leading pack from the chasing cars.
Yeah, exactly, and you're spot on there, Arjuna, with that. And yeah, it's again, this is what we're going to see for the rest of the race, is those little packs now just form of 4 or 5 cars together, and there will be how it goes for the rest of this race here today, as your leaders in GT4 on the right hand side of your screen, your leaders in your MX-5s on the left hand side of your screen, and yeah, even in the touring cars, you've got groups of 6, 7 cars together. So you've got 2 packs there in the touring car class as well. So we're going to see this for the rest of the race, but I do think that when we get to the pit stops, you will get either a little bit of a change of position in those queues, or even a little bit more separation.
This is one race where I think just being smart pays dividends. Now that's really the case for everything. Don't get me wrong, you need to be smart and keep your car clean at all times, but in a race where draft can be so important, top end speed is so important as well. Minimizing the damage that you inflict on your car, really in those final laps when you're going for it, when you're dragging yourself down into turn number 1, really can be crucial. And especially in this MX-5 class where a little bit of damage can affect the aerodynamics, add some more drag to your car, slow you down. Really is going to be important to see that play out. In TCRs, 2 seconds was the gap between Gunez and the chasing pack about 2 laps ago. Carl Janssen has worked his way up into second and has cut that down bit by bit last time around. Half a second faster. Is he in? He's close to getting in drafting range, Paul. How close do you need to be getting that hole in the air punched by the car in front?
I mean, to really feel the effect of it, about a second, but you can get it about 1.3 seconds, 1.4 seconds back, but to really get that strong effect where it really drags you along, 1 second and lower is where you do feel that. So Jansen's just outside of that range. These Hyundais, when you do get into the draft, you'll be hitting 250 kilometers an hour going in towards turn number 1 in these cars. The Audis, when they're in the draft, and you can see one of the Audis towards the back of this queue, Dylan Burse, those cars actually bounce off the rev limiter by the time they reach pit entry on that start and finish straight. Oh, not the best of run through the bus stop chicane there for Carl Janssen, clipping that sausage curb. Fortunately, yeah, things have been changed with that sausage curb, and it's not breaking suspensions quite as much as it was earlier in the week. But Carl, it just kicks the car wide, pushes you off over the left-hand curb, and if you're not careful, you end up with a slow-down penalty.
Pablo Castro was one of the drivers that we saw on Twitch expressing his displeasure with the broken curb. Down into turn number 1. Is there going to be any moving around in the top 5 positions? Josh Thompson was defending from Thomas Gibson, but the Frenchman unable to get past Thompson. Carl Janssen has that gap down to 1.1 seconds. So Corentin Gunes had enjoyed some clean air, some separation. No longer. Here comes the chasing pack. Back to the GT4s as they bobble themselves over the curbs in the bus stop chicane. 29 laps done, so 2 laps away from potentially seeing the first driver come down on towards pit road. And guess what? More traffic, Paul.
Absolutely, yeah. They're going to work their way past the MX-5 leaders right now, and I think those MX-5 leaders, they may have just calmed down just a little bit and just try and sort of keep in the slipstream. Just lift. The key thing, if you're happy to stay behind and you want to stay behind, you just get right in underneath the rear bumper of the car in front, and then just lift your throttle so you're maintaining the speed but not accelerating further. So it keeps you nicely in that draft. You're using less fuel by lifting the throttle as well with that. It just helps you just elongate your pit stop cycle, pit stop strategy. And that's what we'll see out there. But yeah, those GT4s certainly keeping themselves honest. They're not making silly dives. They're not trying to fight every corner. These drivers are being sensible now. They're just staying in the queue. This is the calm before the storm here, Arjuna. This is where everybody's realised, oh yeah, it is a 2.4-hour race. I need to do a bit of fuel saving. Yeah, and I wonder for Ramstein, for example, started on pole position. He's in a pretty good spot to be saving the most fuel, getting 3 cars draft in front of him. Might he be the one to try something bold on the strategy? Save that fuel, put himself in a position to try and minimize, if not eliminate, the splash and dash at the end of the race. On board with the Core Sim Racing Porsche in towards the bus stop chicane. Just watch the line here, how crucial it is to avoid clipping the grass, avoid clipping the anti-cut curb as well. Really carry the momentum in these GT4 cars, which have power, but they are baby GT3s. Less downforce, less power to push you out of that corner and run you all the way down in towards turn number 1 here. Off the banking, and preview of what we might see further in this race. But William Chadwick, at least for the time being, content to ride just behind current race leader Tristan Iglesias. Maniti Racing will be watching on in delight with what they're seeing here. TCR, go ahead. Yeah, I was about to mention that TCR, the leaders, have caught up with Gunes. So he tried to make a breakaway of it and tried to take advantage of the clean air to try and pull away from the rest of the pack. And you see it sometimes in some series here on iRacing that if the leader can break that slipstream, they just waltz away off out at the front and never get challenged again. Whereas here today, we've seen that it got up to about 2.2 seconds did that gap. Now it's just come back down little by little, and now we've got the draft train first through to 8th place in the touring car class. In fact, I think we're going to see a swap at the front because Core may be thinking about that, and Josh Thompson is getting a bit excited now. Yep, Josh Thompson, of course, represents Williams Esports. Will be racing in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup as, oh well, it might be a Core 1 through 3 once more as Thomas Gibson pops himself out of the draft, but he's got some momentum, gets past Thompson, will slot in front of Thompson, behind Janssen. Once more, a train forming behind your race leader. I'm a bit jealous, Paul, not just because Tyler Maxson is 17 years old and gets to race all wonderful sorts of machinery around the world. International jet setter Tyler Maxson, one of our team members at RaceSpotTV, got to drive the BMW M4 GT3 car this past weekend in Dubai. He's going to be racing for Brian Herder Autosport in 2022 in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge in one of these Hyundai Elantras. He's going to have a new teammate in the form of Robert Wickens. In news that everyone was excited to hear about, Robert Wickens, after a horrific accident in Pocono a couple of years ago,
has really worked hard. Physical therapy, strength training, all of that. And despite the fact that he still will be driving with hand control, something that Brian Herter Autosport has experience with some of their other drivers, it is so good to see Robert Wickens back in a race car going racing in such a competitive series.
If ever there was a feel-good story, I mean, this is it, you know. It's so good to see Robert back into a competitive car, and that's the thing as well. It is a competitive car. There's a bit of bump drafting between your leaders there, down in towards the bus stop chicane. But yeah, this Hyundai Elantra, it's going to be the first year of the Elantra, isn't it? Of course, because
no.
Yeah, they were racing the Veloster though for
they split the attentions.
Oh, that's a GT4. That's the BMW.
It's the only,
around it goes.
Yeah, the only BMW in the field. What happened here? Was that assisted or was that solo? We'll get the replay in a couple of moments' time. Last year in TCR, Brian Herter Autosport did compete both the Veloster and the Elantra, and a move that I think was illustrating the frustrations with BOP that we saw from the Hyundai guys, mainly in World Touring car, if we're being honest. That's a solo spin in one of the Apex Academy cars. Michael Yanni, who's fighting back from his own misfortune on lap number 1, takes advantage there. But yeah, in the World Touring Car Championship, I think it's fair to say the Hyundai manufacturer outfit not happy with how things were going with the Veloster, so they said, you know what, we've developed the fastest car in TCR once, we can do it again, and that's why we've got this new car onto pit lane by himself. Race leader from Maniti Racing, Tristan Iglesias, has to come down first. He's been towing around the rest of his competitors.
And this is the thing, this is the point I was making, isn't it? That you want to keep in a slipstream, you want to keep in a pack to try and get yourself even just one lap extra of fuel. We've got 3 other GT4s onto pit road as well. So the pit stop cycle started for those GT4s, but yeah, being in that draft, being in that slipstream, even if you saved yourself 1 lap of fuel, that will help you towards the end of this race. It means they'll be filling up the... Well, you've got a choice here with the GT4s. You either do your short stop now and then do your long stop towards the end and carry a heavier car, or you go the full stop now and then splash and dash at the end. It's your choice. You generally see it being the splash and dash at the end, though.
There is merit to the argument to try and go early, though. If you can get the undercut, break out of the draft, you've got a lighter car to ride around and go as fast as you can. And potentially, if you haven't worn your tires too much, we might see drivers able to make that work. I don't think that's what we're going to see here. It looks like 40.6 seconds in the box for Tristan Iglesias compared to 36.3 for Ion Gagnon Renault. Not sure exactly where the difference is built up in terms of the time there, but I can tell you that the Maniti Racing cars come straight out into a group of MX-5s. That's the leaders, and this is costing the Maniti car valuable time. Will we see the rest of the 3 leaders onto pit lane this time? Looks like one might be indicating. Chadwick fakes them out. Here comes the pole position winner, Maxime Ramstein.
Oh, this is really fun to see. The little bit of a, it's almost like being in a full course caution, isn't it? In NASCAR or an IndyCar. Oh, there goes the Apex Academy car around. Well, Michael Yanni not having the best of days, I think it's safe to say, out there. But yeah, how much is that like Indy or like NASCAR with a little fake out to onto pit road?
I know, exactly. And I'll tell you what, Michael Yanni is just going to be hoping that he can get out of Daytona as soon as possible. Made his official Apex Academy debut 7 days ago in the BMW Sim GT Cup, and now, well, goes from bad to worse. Here's the replay. You'll get a look. It's contact with one of the core sim racing TCRs as Yanni comes off a pit road, trying to keep it tight on cold tires. I don't think there's much that Yanni really could have done there, and loses a whole bunch of time, compounding the misery that he's already feeling. Where is Maxime Ramstein?
He's still on pit road. He's still in his box now. So is this going to be a speeding penalty, potentially? I'm waiting for him to go.
It has to be.
That is a 55-second pit stop.
He took tires. I think that's what we're seeing here, Paul.
Well, 55-second pit stop compared to Iglesias with the 40-second pit stop, so 15 seconds difference there between the two of them. But is Ramstein now going to be able to carry that speed with the fresher rubber?
I think that has to be tires. I don't think you take fuel and tires at the same time in this GT4 class.
I'm pretty sure you do, actually. But the thing is, speeding on pit lane is a 15-second penalty if you did.
It's 15 seconds if you don't take service, though. Otherwise, it's a 42-second hold because of the way the iRacing system works. Here comes Harlow and Chadwick onto the lane. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but it gives you an extra penalty if you take the penalty while also taking service.
I thought that was more for an infraction for like an unsafe pit entry rather than speeding. Yeah, they take fuel and tyres at the same time, so I think it was a speeding on pit road penalty that he got.
Well, get word. I don't like to disagree with Paul, but I don't think that was speeding. Ross Woodford.
Because it's a 15-second penalty as a speeding on pit road.
To contrast with what you're saying, look at this, by the way, in the Hornet's Nest TCR and MX-5s, once again sharing the same bit of real estate on track. Ross Woodford, Spencer Kostowicz, and Adam Isaacson all also had 55-second stops. So there is definitely something going on with the fuel, with the strategy game here. Something is amiss. The question will be for the two cars in pit lane right now, which way do they go? 45 seconds and counting for them in the lane. Iglesias will take back the race lead. Harlow and Chadwick, I think, going the same strategy as what we saw from Maxime Ramsheim and confirmed 55 seconds there. Iglesias is doing what I talked about earlier. Less fuel on board potentially, trying to go fast and make things count with 80 minutes left in this race.
Well, the thing is, yeah, if you split that fuel mileage and decide, right, we're going to, with the amount of fuel that you're going to be taking, then, you know, if you split that more evenly, then yeah, you can shorten that pit stop here at the start. But still, I just, yeah, 55 seconds is how long it takes to brim the tank from empty. There we go. Thank you, Dominic Angle, for that. So that means, yeah, there is fuel strategy at play for Iglesias and going on Renault.
Now, it is a 9 and a bit second difference between, it's 14 seconds difference between Iglesias and Chadwick. Ion Canyon Renault went shortest of them all in 36 seconds in the box. So either he knows something we don't, or Iglesias has just gone less aggressive in the undercut than what we're going to see from Gagnon Renault, recovering from his own incident earlier in this race. Chadwick Ramstein separated very closely. Egloff has gotten into the mix, but he's 10 seconds shorter in terms of fuel than Jackson, Suslin, Harlow, and the rest of the crew as well. Strategy, even in a 2.4-hour race, can be oh so fun.
Daniel Ferguson, the one that could go the longest of them all in GT4 as well. He's on pit road right now. 35 lap stint for him. So he's done a very good job there as the Pure Sims driver. Here we are on board, and you can see the Vandervelde car in front. Ferguson's gone with that core sim racing car. Yeah, Ferguson's out the pit. 36.5 pit stop. So again, he's a shorter fuel stop here.
And given,
wow, this is going to be intriguing to see how this all pans out.
Yeah, and given that, Chadwick makes a mistake into turn one, will lose one, might lose two, as Egloff will go down his inside. Given that Ferguson was able to save so much fuel in the first stint of the race, he might be in a position where he's going to need to stop again with a stop that short. But he may be looking at a quite rapid cycle through the pit stop. He's found himself in second position, has worked a treat for him. MX-5's the first of them onto pit road. Franco Carla has pitted from the top 5 all by himself as well. Not ideal. He'll lose the draft and have to try and get up to speed by himself in this early portion of the race. And I tell you what as well, Paul, he's going to need another stop given that he's pitted about an hour and 10 minutes into this race.
I think that they'll be okay. I think that they'll be able to make it because that MX-5 can run long on the fuel. So I do believe that they will be able to make it to the end of this race. Well, Franco, And we'll see that. I've had a number of retirements from this race so far. We've lost about 8 cars from this race, so not good to see that. We want to see as many cars out on track as possible, but unfortunate is the nature of this track. You do see incidents happen that wipe people out. But that TCR, the touring car field, still 8 cars covered by, get this, 3 seconds.
It's great. I'm loving it. Paul, question for you. You're talking about the nature of this track. Have you ever finished a Daytona 24 without damage on your car?
I've never finished a Daytona 24.
You and I are in the same position then. Because I haven't either, and I've tried like 4 times.
The last time I tried was in 2017, and I binned it in the Mercedes here at the bus stop chicane, and I vowed not to do it again. So I'm going to be racing next week.
In what car?
I honestly don't know.
So be scared if you're in a split with Paul Smith, because a week before the race he still doesn't know what he's racing in. Do you know what class you're competing in at least?
No.
Oh wow. Okay, so be especially scared of Paul Smith.
If you see a Team Mad car, just run. Run as fast as you can.
Looking down the order, you had mentioned that we might have had 8 retirements. You're right.
Kieran Harrison's actually back out there,
I know, and
isn't
he's towing around his teammates, if you hadn't noticed.
Yeah.
Playing the team game. David Pena, by the way, in the MX-5s might also... no, never mind. Blip on my timing screen might have just dipped low coming down on that main straightaway. Let's go back and look at some of the MX-5 fighting. This is 7th and 8th positions behind David Pena. They're 3.5 back from the leading group of cars. 5 split by, give or makes no difference, about 1.2 seconds. Kanchin from Espes, from Raikkonen, from Voss, from Van der Zande. That's confusing me because it's spelt with a Z, and I've got a teammate that's very similar but spelt with an S instead. So hopefully I said that one correctly. For Franco Cantor by himself, we'll wait and see what the lap time is for him, but in a bit of a difficult position, needing to match the times of these leaders as they roll themselves around the infield section. Chadwick has lost out to Jackson Suzlin-Harlow as well, so one mistake has compounded, and now he is dropped behind what would be, I think, net P3 around the outside. Suzlin-Harlow will sweep around not just Egloff, but in front of Maxime Ramstein as well. I think there's more fuel games being played by Ramstein here.
I mean, if I'm Will Chadwick, I'm not worried too much about being behind a car. Because again, you want to save some fuel even at this point now in the GT4s, because you know you're going to have to pit again. So as much fuel, but the problem you don't want to, the trap that you don't want to fall into, is being overly slower compared to the leaders who did do that short fuel stop. So I mean, you look at it, Egloff and Styx, they had what, 45-second pit stop, so they're not completely filled up with their fuel in the GT4, so it's just this intriguing game, and this is why we love endurance racing, and especially around here as well, where you get these battle packs of where that strategy comes to play. But you are right, Kieran Harrison dragging his teammates around in the TCRs, as we've got another of our MX-5s onto pit road, in fact a couple.
That's the race leader, Sonny Kanchin, followed in by David Pena, who does pit this time around. So these cars should be good. They've got an hour and 15 minutes. We'll have to make 70 minutes to the end of this race. Simona Madoka into pit lane as well. This train of TCR cars is a sight to behold, I'll say that. And Paul, I know you can't get too greedy. You've got 2 TCR cars that have joined iRacing just a month or so ago. If you were going to add one more, well, which one are you going for? Because I'll be honest, I'd love to see an Alfa Romeo join the party.
I mean, who doesn't love the passion and the majesty of an Alfa Romeo? I don't know. I think we've got a really, really good mix. It'd have to be something that would complement the other cars and really work well with them. So it's a shame that Subaru no longer have the TCR car, because that fell out of homologation. But yeah, that was an interesting one to see out there in TCR. It wasn't the best performing, I must say, but still, it was great to see that car. So it just have to be something that would complement these cars that we've got on iRacing so far to really do it. But I think we have got a good mix of TCR cars right now. But yeah, maybe one. I'm greedy. 1 or 2 more.
I mean, if you look at, you could get a couple of Volkswagens if you really want. I mean, the Volkswagen Group cars. You've got the GTI, of course, the VW GTI, which does look quite mean and aggressive. Cupra as well. That's the other one that I was thinking of, which I think would be somewhat popular. So, plenty of options to pick from. Now, the question is, which one of them races in IMSA? Because that's the one that we're most likely to get.
Well, I'm actually just trying to find that out myself. So, I mean, if you did want to talk amongst yourselves, everybody, then that's
I'll talk. We've got MX-5s onto pit lane. Pablo Espes for Obsidian Racing, who looked like he was going fast, trying to find his box. Will that be a speeding penalty? Remember, no pit limiter for these MX-5 cars. Tom Voss, Felix Votter, and Shono Goto all into the pit lane as well. Still leaves about 4 or 5 yet to have come and pit in the MX-5s. A couple of stragglers being passed by the TCR cars now as well, Paul.
Yeah, so this is where you're starting to see it all happen here. I will have to say, please don't shout at me, but the IMSA website isn't the greatest to say. But yeah, you have got the Alfa Romeo Giulietta words. They're very difficult to
live
to
broadcasting.
Get out there. Yeah, live broadcasting. It happens. Move on. So yeah, I mean, you don't really have much of a choice of cars out there in the IMSA. I'm just looking at last season, and there's really only the Alfa Romeo left, really.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think there's more of a mix in World TCR or some of the others. There you go. There's that spin.
That was Ross Woodford in the number 32. Drives for Yas Heat in LMP2 cars mostly, so a bit of a transition from GT4 to LMP2. Not that far off the pace, but just hasn't been an easy day by any means for Woodford, as Will Chadwick gives the bump once more to Maxime Ramstein, who they're trying to close on Iglesias, but they're still 15 seconds back, so basically that pit stop delta between the two cars. So we'll see. Word in the YouTube chat is there's a pit limiter on the MX-5 car, Paul.
Is it really? That's a new thing.
Yeah, that's news to me.
I didn't know that.
Maybe it happened when they gave the car the sequential gearbox. I'm not 100% sure.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't know that there was a pit limiter in this car. So definitely. I mean, I do think that the car is actually, and I know this is going to be quite a controversial comment here amongst the iRacing community, especially the MX-5 community. I actually enjoy driving the car more with a paddle shift than the H-pad. Interesting.
Now, I don't have a firm opinion either way. I just find that opinion interesting.
Arjuna with the splinters up his pants.
I am right on the fence. So okay, it confirms as well it was added with the sequential box.
Well, there you go.
Only in first gear, though, if you're curious.
Yeah. And yeah, why not? I mean, there's other series and other types of cars where it is only there in first gear as well. So yeah, okay. Worth pointing out, by the way, that Josh Thompson has just happily sat at behind these core sim racing cars. Now, this is where the lap traffic of Kieran Harrison is going to come into play a little bit, because he's now behind the leading. Oh dear.
Oh dear indeed, and that's lights flashing from Michael Yanni, I think. Might not be too impressed with Ross Woodford. Oh, it's been a torrid couple of laps for Mr. Woodford. We'll see if we can dial up what happened here, Paul, into the International Horseshoe.
Okay, Here we go. Is it going to be a dive into the horseshoe? They both go a bit deep and just boop into the back of that Apex Racing Academy car. And around they go. Generally, when it's front to rear impact, you always say that it's on the car behind. And yeah, the car in front's just going a little bit slower than you imagined it was going to be, and boop, around it goes. So I think legitimate reason to flash the headlights there from Michael Yanni.
Boop, I think, describes that quite nicely. Chadwick outside of Jackson, Suzlin, Harlow as they come down in towards turn number 1. Pascal Sticks trying to get around the outside of Guilherme Egloff in the 28 car. Juan Bustamante has joined the fun here as well. Plenty of different strategies going on here. Jasper Rijken onto pit lane this time by. I think he missed his box last time, and you can see why, because he's legitimately the second box on the lane, and even this time around slides a little bit wide, a little bit deep I should say, and has to back that car up. It's going to cost him a whole bunch of time. Only one of your MX-5 cars has yet to pit. That's Franco Ruggeri in the number 40 car. And remember, pit stop delta in this MX-5 car anywhere from 95 to 105 seconds. It's a pretty lengthy stop for these MX-5s.
Josh Thompson has been on the in-game in-sim chat. Just gave 3 dots on the thing, as we've actually got 2 TCRs coming onto pit road. This is interesting then. It's a little bit off cycle because these cars, they could go about 84, 86 minutes, can these? So, I mean, we are coming up to that time now here, because you'll reach that hour mark and you'll pretty much be around the time to pit. So, 3 TCRs onto pit road already. Deciding to make that pit stop. Well, you're getting the front fresh rubber, and that does give you about a second and a quarter lap advantage for the first sort of 3 or 4 laps. If you're careful with those tyres on the outlap, if you look after them, you can get about 3-4 laps out of them with peak performance, and it just gives you that little bit of an advantage. So undercut is a valuable and very legitimate strategy here.
You're being told to wash your mouth out, by the way, about your opinion on the MX-5.
Oh, I don't care.
No, it's just a good thing. It's a good thing that TCR fans weren't listening during Friday Night Meme Time, when I might have said some harsh things about the TCR car.
I mean, I wasn't particularly happy when I was in race control. But
I'm not allowed to say the thing that I said then. That was an 18-plus broadcast, as we turned it into after the fact. I don't want to get in trouble this early in 2022. We'll put it that way.
It's not like us to get in trouble at all, is it? Really?
No, never.
On broadcasts, you know, live broadcasting, nothing ever goes wrong in those.
Hey, I mean, we survived Rallycross without getting in trouble. Think about the carnage that we saw in that series.
Well, I mean, I thought it was a thoroughly entertaining series, and Chris Leon, if you are listening, would like to carry on my broadcasting career with that.
Uh-oh.
Don't mind me, I've got things falling over here, so mind talk amongst yourselves, everybody.
Kieran Harrison has finally stopped towing along the Core Sim Racing trio out front. He's down on pit lane this time around. We still see the top 6 or so cars staying out there on the track. And in TCR, it's Gunes from Janssen, from Gibson, from Thompson, from Burst. I tell you what, before we really get into the meat of the cycle, let's quickly try and walk you through the standings and give you an update with just over 60 minutes left to go. In the GT4s, Tristan Iglesias leads the way in the big green machine. Short fill time for him, leading this race into the pit stop cycle. What will he do out of pit lane for that final splash and dash? Daniel Ferguson for Pure Sims went longest in terms of fuel, also had the shortest stop. It will be an interesting strategy call from him, along with his Pure Sims teammate Ian Gagnon Renault. They sit currently on provisional podium positions. Then we find the groups of cars that stayed in the pit lane for longest. Jackson, Suzlin, Harlow, William Chadwick, and Maxim Ramstein, all in the top 4 into the pit stop cycle. They're now running 4th and below. They've got Guilherme Egloff and Pascal Sticks for company, while Juan Bustamante is at the tail end of this train. Adam Isaacson completes the top 10. Spencer Kostowicz had issues, mildly puts it, on lap number 1. He runs 11th with Michael Yanni, Ross Woodford having come together a couple of laps ago, 12th and 13th. Travis Schwenke, the final car still running in this class. Bo Albert, the one retiree in this class. Paul, why don't you walk us through the TCRs?
Yeah, certainly. So it's a gaggle of 6 at the moment at the front of your touring cars, with Corentin Gunness at the front of that one, followed by his teammates Carl Janssen and Thomas Gibson. Josh Thompson is there in 4th place ahead of Dylan Burst and Roberto Ferrari. Dr. David Baker himself is in 7th place. He won't be happy with that. He'd like to be in this customary 6th position ahead of Hugo Brandau. And then Manuel Rey Alago, with Kira Wolf just heading onto pit road now as we talk. So the pit stops are happening. Jake Maloney then, he's had a pretty lonely race out there. He's down in 11th place ahead of Pablo Castro. Konstantin Stolzenberg is also in the front as pitted early. Kimo Soimonen did head onto pit road and has actually retired from the race. Kieran Harrison has headed onto pit road as well, and has pretty much parked his car. If he's out there to play the team game after what had happened earlier on to his race, and he could be a little bit of a thorn in the side of people like Josh Thompson and the others. Other retirements from the race: Jack Sedgwick, George Simmons and Diogo Pinto, all out from the touring car field.
That leaves, last but not least, the MX-5s, and it is broken up in the pit stop cycle. We were looking at a 5-car breakaway, potentially a run to the checkered flag, a drag race to the line, but Pablo Espes finds himself 6 seconds clear of Franco Cantor in second, who was the first car to come down to pit lane. Tom Voss sits in third. He's got some fighting going on behind him. Christoph Sanchez and former race leader Sonny Kanchin 4th and 5th positions, while David Pena is in 6th. 10 seconds back, 11 seconds back then to Jasper Raikön, who does have Shono Goto, Felix Votter, Franco Ruggeri, Simona Madoka and Tomoyasu Inatani, all for company, while the final cars still running in this field include Yannick van der Sande, as well as Owen Carl, who's still out there and circulating. He will get past at least Arturo Costas when all things are said and done. Other retirements in this class include Tom Raitchie as well as Brad Wooten, and that brings us very nicely into the TCR pit stops, Paul.
Yeah, they're all onto pit road here, so they've managed to do 43 laps. Thomas Gibson is still out there, and he's going to do another lap here, so he's going to go 44 laps, as is Hugo Brandau and Manu Rey Alago. So those 3 drivers able to go 43, 44 laps then on fuel. That is quite amazing, as there's quite a lot of smoke out there on pit road, waiting for the fuel tanks to be filled up to the required amount. You're looking at around about 73, 74 litres to play it safe with that much on the TCRs. But yeah, front tyres only for the TCRs, and they will leave pit road.
Question will be, where will they be in comparison to the likes of Pablo Castro, Konstantin Stolzenberg, who came down very, very early? There comes Castro. He might have leapfrogged himself to the front of this field. Josh Thompson wins the race off of pit road. He's in front of Carl Janssen. What happened to Corentin Gunness? 38 seconds in the box, 4 seconds longer than Josh Thompson. Indication of how much fuel Bosch Thompson was able to save, and the core stranglehold on the front of this class has gone. Castro from Thompson, from Stolzenberg, Carl Janssen down to 7th spot.
Yeah, so that's a big turnaround then for those core sim racing drivers. Now, Thompson, he wants to get a shift on here. He's got the fresher rubber now. Castro should be up to speed though. I mean, Castro's last lap, I could tell you, which was on the hot lap, was a 59.4. Your leader, Thomas Gibson, was doing 59.7s. Previous lap, so Slipstream was involved in that for Thomas, but yeah, they're about, looking at my times as Gibson comes in, they were about 50 seconds behind Thomas Gibson, out there just on flat out pace. But remember, with pit road exit, you do cut the inside of turn number 1.
We'll get a look at Thomas Gibson as he rolls off of pit lane, looking from up above as one of the Vendaval GT4s cuts his way through the TCR cars as they dive their way into the bus stop chicane. Corentin Gunes 1.4 seconds behind Carl Janssen, so he needs to get a hurry on. But we've seen just how quick Gunes can be over the course of the day so far. Castro from Thompson from Stolzenberg closing up with one another as Stolzenberg gives the bump to Josh Thompson. Here then,
Gibson's on the move.
Yeah, here rolls Gibson, but he's got a long way to go. Be close. I don't think Gibson will emerge in front though.
It's going to be tight, that's for sure, as your leaders are your leading pack is going into turn number 1. I tell you what, he's actually going to be close to pit exit with the timing now. He's going to be getting back up to speed, and Gibson will head to the front of your field, so it's worked out nicely for Thomas. But these four, they're going to be into that slipstream and be able to reel him in once again.
Happy to be proven wrong in this occasion. Thomas Gibson was, what, 33 seconds in the box. So not only did he stay out there longer than everyone else, then by virtue of staying out there longer, had the shortest pit stop of anyone, Paul.
Exactly. So that's what you get there. It worked out nicely for you. 44 laps he did on fuel, which is really, really good fuel saving. I said that it was key, didn't I, that you don't necessarily want to get to the front of any of the fields, really. You don't want to be forging a path for everyone else to take advantage of your slipstream. But yeah, Gibson nicely finds himself to the front of the field. Now the question is, if you're Josh Thompson, do you sit behind Castro, do you bump draft him, or do you try and get in front of Castro if you feel confident enough that you are actually faster?
Well, he's tucked up behind Castro now, and Carl Janssen has cycled in front of Stolzenberg as Corentin Gunes now breaks the 1 second barrier to 5th position, so he's coming and coming quickly as well. Don't count Gunes completely out of the mix with 53 minutes still left on the clock. Thompson's gone high. Interesting call. He's out of drafting range. He's actually going to help out Carl Janssen very slightly, and you can see Thompson's having to duck back to try and get a little bit of draft coming out of turn 4.
Yeah, he got such a good run out the bus stop chicane that it was almost a case of, well, do you back off the throttle and try and wait until you get onto the straight and onto the tri-oval, or do you make it work? But look at that, Castro's got the slipstream of Gibson as well in towards turn number 1, and it's going to be Castro staying there, but Thompson's hanging it out around the outside. If they give each other room through here, Thompson's got the inside for the International Horseshoe.
I think Gibson got a bit of a helping hand there from Castro as Thompson holds the inside line, but if he can get onto the power earlier, he'll need to use that to try and get the run, because Castro will have the outside and the momentum. Door banging between the two of them, classic touring car action. Thompson will try and hang it now around the outside of the kink, but front wheel drive understeer City will lunge it back to the inside of the second hairpin.
Oh, and he's just barged his way past Castro. That's a little bit rude there, Josh. You know, the front tyres won't be fully up to temperature and pressure on this lap either. So, well, no, actually, he will be in that temperature and pressure range. He was trying to take advantage of that fresher rubber. He's throwing it up the inside there. He is there. Castro knows he's there, and I think Castro's just trying to squeeze him potentially, but it's a typical touring car move, isn't it? A little bit of elbows out, and, well, I am there on the brakes. They are alongside, so you would actually say that you expect Castro to give a little bit of space there.
Yeah, he does try and turn it a bit aggressively. I'm not saying he did anything wrong. I'm just saying he was aggressive.
Yeah, you'd expect just a little bit more space given there, wouldn't you? It's not that you're not wanting people to fight and defend for the position. It's just that, you know, you play the games, play the percentages. You've still got 51 minutes to go here in this race, and as we can see, totally chaotic racing is at play again. Big, huge. That's a huge incident there. That's the Apex Racing Academy car involved in your GT4s as well. But crucially, Josh Thompson and Castro are around.
I don't think that GT4 did anything wrong there.
No, not at all. It was the innocent party and all of that was Michael Yanni, and I think he's finally said, you know what, I've had such bad luck today, that's me done.
We'll see if we can get the replay, but Wow, oh wow, it was looking like a hornet's nest, and well, disaster to put it mildly. We'll grab the replay, we'll take a look at what happened here. We'll also have to go look at something that happened in the MX-5 shortly after this. But what happens here is that Stolzenberg, no, excuse me, that's not Stolzenberg, that might be Dylan, sorry, not Dylan Burse.
No, not Burse. It's not Burse, that's for sure.
Yeah, but
it's Ferrari.
Yeah, that's who it is. It's so hard to tell. Let's see if we can jump on board with Roberto Ferrari. No, it's not Ferrari either.
No, it is Stolzenberg then.
Okay, so
Stolzenberg tried to bump draft through the corner, which isn't the... yeah, here we are. So he tries to bump draft through the middle of the corner. That gets a wiggle on and wipes out 3 cars.
What do they say? You said this earlier, Paul. What do they say in NASCAR? Never bump during the corner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I think part of the problem is that these drivers aren't used to doing bump drafting and they don't know the etiquette of it.
Right.
And it's coming to show here as here we have a look at what happened in the RX-5s.
It's Jasper Raikkonen that has the moment here. Through the bus stop, and it's onto the anti-cut car, and this is going to be vicious. That's a hard impact into the wall for the number 45 car, who instantly has to take the tow back to pit lane, and well, disaster on one part of the track, disaster on another part of the track. What did I say coming out of the pit cycle, Paul? The core stranglehold has been broken?
Yeah, well, that's sure been changed. I tell you what, I do feel sorry for Michael Yanni though. It's completely the innocent party, just trying to get past all the TCR cars and gets wiped out. Oh, there's the 32 facing the wrong way. Just lapped them at Ross Woodford. Well, he's got all that hard work to do again to try and get past the TCRs. But what this does mean now, unfortunately, is that we've gone from an 8-car train to a 6-car train for the touring cars.
Let's see if we can pick up what happened here to the Heat driver. Lots of speed. Just look at the momentum into turn 1. Late on the brakes as well, and just carries all of that speed way too deep into the corner, and now has to do all that work over again to pass those cars once more on the track. In terms, by the way, of the GT4s, we've not really talked about them much recently. Iglesias, 20 seconds clear of Jackson Suslin Harlow. It might still work out in his favor, you know, here, Paul. I think that call from Iglesias might work out nicely. A question will be, how short? How short is the pit stop for those cars he was battling earlier on?
Well, that's it, because he's got that lighter car, hasn't he? He's able to do that and be able to put in those quick times. I mean, I look at his average lap times. He's doing 1:53.2, average 5 laps, compared to Jackson Harlow, who's doing 53.8 at the moment. So, I mean, that's an average of 0.6 per second per lap that Jackson Harlow is losing out on Iglesias right here. So, that is big. If Iglesias can keep this up and just keep going for as long as possible to pull that gap out, he's got a really, really good chance of securing a victory here today.
What happened to David Baker in the Pure Sims car? Oh, just deep through the bus stop chicane, collects some cones, collects a slowdown penalty as well in the number 23 car. That's going to be bit of heartbreak and frustration for Baker, who will now lose the back end of the peloton that is chasing the TCR race leaders, who are side by side for second. Gibson and Gunes battling amongst each other while Carl Janssen has taken over the race lead. Behind them, Stolzenberg, Burse, and Ferrari all ready to pounce. It's a core party, and look at how the rear brakes glow on these TCR cars.
You wouldn't think that they're teammates, would you, right now? You think that they were all fighting it out yeah, it's a bit like a Royal Rumble, is this, isn't it? Just one by one, the cars are getting eliminated out of this race. But yeah, it's you never have friends in a Royal Rumble, because at the end of the day, one of you has to win. And well, these drivers right now, here we get another look. This is the onboard then from the GT4, just minding his own business, bang! Into the wall. And I'll give him credit, he's kept that up high as well to keep it out the way of everybody else. So he did a really good job, did Michael Yannick, but I think he's the unluckiest person in this race here today.
Unluckiest person at Daytona in the last couple of weeks, that's for sure. I really feel bad for poor Michael Yanni. By the way, MX-5 still interesting, just not for the race lead. Here's the battle for third on back. Sonic Hanchin has marched his way back to the front of this group of cars. Christoph Sanchez, David Pena, Tom Voss behind him, as Pena and Sanchez might swap around coming through the International Horseshoe. Pablo Espez stretching his legs bit by bit. He's 7 seconds clear of Franco Cantor. Now, if traffic plays a factor, it might close down. It's not going to close in Sonny Kanchin, though, and that's what strategy does, Paul. He was 10 seconds slower, was Kanchin, than Espez in the pit cycle. He's now 17 seconds behind Espez on track. Last time by, 3 seconds slower were these group of cars on the right-hand side of your screen.
Yeah, they really were caught out, weren't they? I think there was a little bit of traffic that was working their way through, which slowed them down. And yeah, it's just big. Is how the strategy can separate you out, and then before you know it, you just then get that gap. And Pablo Espas, doing a fantastic job at the front of your MX-5 field. Of course, he has got. He came in, 11 laps ago, did him, compared to the others who were about 11 and a half, 12 laps ago. I can tell you, by the way, that, as you can imagine, Josh Thompson wasn't the happiest person in the sim chat, so unfortunately I can't repeat one of the things that he said, but yes, he wasn't happy. He asked the question of why.
Only one of the words was not broadcastable from Josh Thompson after that. Shock. That's the big shock there. Jackson Susan Harlow sees Juan Bustamante past William Chadwick now in towards turn 1. Chadwick goes defensive, covering off the move from Maxime Ramstein. 20 seconds again, the gap between Iglesias and the car in net second position after the strategy cycle has played out. Shouldn't be far away from seeing the first pit stops in this class. 16 seconds shorter in the box for Iglesias. He's 20 laps into his run. Remember, he did 31 laps in the first portion of this race, Paul. I think that Iglesias is maybe only 4 or 5 laps away from diving down onto the pits.
You're going to be getting closer to that pit stop. Yeah, you're absolutely right there. Because we're going to see those cars that did completely fill their pits go for pit stops around about 20 minutes to go. So yeah, you're going to be seeing your leading GT4s then heading on to pit road. Daniel Ferguson and Ian Gagnon Renault will be the first ones that should really come down onto pit road first. I can tell you that Egloff in the GT4s is the first victim of the instant limit. It's something that we haven't mentioned at all on this broadcast, but you have got a 20 incident limit before you then get a drive-through penalty, and then for every 10 instant points after that, you get yourselves another drive-through penalty. So the first of you victims of the instant limit. In fact, Ian Gagnon Renault is on pit road right now.
I forgot that the incident limit was even in play, so thank you for reminding me. I think Gagnon Renault slid through his box very slightly. If Gagnon Renault is down now, expect Iglesias in 2 or 3 laps. Expect Ferguson in 2 or 3 laps as well. So expect pit road to be busy for the final time today. Of course, TCR's having made their one and only stop. Same thing has happened with the MX-5's battle for the lead, and TCR is intensifying once more. It's a hornet's nest. How tentative, excuse me, I should pose this question the other way around. As the MX-5 says, I don't want any part of that. I'm going to shortcut the bus stop chicane. How aggressive will someone like Ferrari or Stolzenberg be in this situation, Paul, knowing that they've got 3 teammates to fight with still 40 minutes to go? How long do you wait here?
I think you wait until the final 5 minutes. You just sit behind, keep in the draft, ensure that you keep yourself in contention there, and then in that final 5 minutes, that's when you start getting a bit excited. That's when you start making those moves forward for yourself, because if you start fighting now, all you're going to do is slow each other down. You lose the leaders, and that's the end of your chance. Whereas if you leave it a little bit later on, that's when the guys at the front will start trying to get a bit desperate and try and fight as well. So you're more chance of staying with them.
So 40 minutes on the clock. And one thing you and I were joking about before we even started and went live here, Paul, is the fact that a 2-point... IMSA, as much as I love the racing, does have some baffling things in it. Like the fact that they call a 2 hour and 40-minute race 2.4 hours, which is not true. 2 hours and 24 minutes, like we have here today, is actually a 2.4 hour race.
Yeah, what would that be? A 2.65?
Something like that, yes.
That. You know, so yeah.
2.72 or something like that.
By the way, pit stop time for guy on Renault, 41.2 seconds.
That's a long old stop, I tell you. Although, if we...
See, he was 35 seconds in the first stop.
Right.
So he was one of the shorter of the short pit stops.
I wonder if he's tire limited with the 35 seconds then. Is that like the floor that we'll see? Unless you want to go brave and not take tires. Which, we haven't really talked about the weather. It gives me an opportunity to break out our new graphic courtesy of our partners at ATVO. 29 degrees in the air. Not much warmer on the track itself. 34 degrees Celsius as we reach 2:30 here in the virtual Daytona Beach. Temperature is not that high, but the way that the model works on iRacing, Paul, is that it's a heat-based model. And you heat up the tires, the faster you go, the longer you go fast as well. So these long straightaways do tend to build up the wear in the tire.
They certainly do, and especially with something like the TCR car that we're seeing on the screen right now, as we've actually got a battle for fourth place in TCR here. There, and Salzenberg keeping ahead. Oh no, that was lap traffic. No, Dylan burst behind. Yeah, you know, I'm right. You know, with these TCRs, the front tyres actually run that little bit hotter than the ideal temperatures. So you do lose the performances. There's Tristan Iglesias.
No.
Then.
That's Ferguson. Oh, Iglesias is in as well. You're right.
Yeah, he is. So with both the leaders then onto pit road for your overall places for their final pit stops. What is their pit stop time? But just to finish my point, those TCRs especially, the reason why they took the front tyres only is because it's not so much the tyre wear that's the problem, it's the heat that you put through those front tyres, and you're always running just that little bit hotter than would be ideal on those front tyres. The other cars, you want to take tyres just for the freshness to give you that little bit of performance advantage. Iglesias, 37.6 seconds pit stop for him.
I think he's got this in the bag now. I think unless there's a miracle, given that he had a 20-second advantage over the chasing group of Bustamante, Chadwick, etc., I think he's looking really, really good here, which kind of goes against what his teammate Tim Matska had said in the YouTube chat. And Tim, if you're watching, how dare you doubt your driver like that?
Well, I can tell you now, looking at the live timing, he's 35 seconds off of your race leader. To go cone to cone without a pit stop, without stopping in the box, is about 29 seconds. So, plus you've got that little bit of slowing down and speeding up afterwards as well. So you're talking about 30 seconds just to go and traverse the pit lane here. So he is in a very, very strong position right now.
Yeah, no, I think he's got this. Knock on wood, let's make sure there's no commentator's curse happening right here. At least Lorenzo Bonder isn't here in the comms booth, because then it would be a guaranteed incident for Tristan Iglesias. I think he's looking good. I think now the battle will be the rest of the podium positions. Ferguson's in a good spot. Gagnon Renault, he's going to potentially come under fire. Pascal Stix, by the way, has gotten past William Chadwick. He's had a really impressive second stint to this race. We're still watching the TCR machines, though, coming through the second of the hairpins in the infield. They've got some of the MX-5 cars for company. That's third on back. Sonny Kanchin still leads the race for the final step on the podium as they come back onto the banking for what is the 55th time in this TCR class. It is about the 50th time for the MX-5 class. Coming to 20 laps to go. Almost 30 minutes left on the clock. What a special race this is, Paul. so fun that we kick off special events with a solo endurance race. Yes, it's only 2.4 hours, I know, but it's something that I know people across the iRacing service want more of.
I mean, you know, there are events, like you pointed out, that you can do solo with, like the iRacing Nürburgring Endurance Series, to give it its official title, Arjun. There are things like that which you can run solo. I mean, 4 hours around Nürburgring, it's nothing, is that? This race is nothing when you compare it to doing a 4-hour stint around there. But this one is a bit more full on, a bit more, you know, cars constantly coming at you because of the fact that you catch up to those MX-5s, or, you know, if you're in the GT4s, then catching up to the TCRs, then MX-5s again and TCRs. You've always got something going on, whereas somewhere like the Nürburgring, it's more against the track than so much against your competitor. Front four have actually broken away a little bit here in your touring car class. Dylan Burse has just dropped back a little bit, and Konstantin Stolzenberg really has dropped off the back of them.
Juan Bustamante onto pit road as well in the GT4, so might open the door for Pascal Six, Jackson, Suzlin, Harlow. In fact, wait. Those cars can probably go 8 laps more from this point forward. They may have to try and not take tires to just try and get close to the battle for the podium at this point. It'll be interesting. I think there's plenty of intrigue still yet to come in the GT4 category. We'll wait and see. Not sure if you were following our YouTube chat, Paul, but Jake Maloney, I almost said it, Jake Maloney is so bored that he's popped in to say, will this race ever end?
Yes, it will, in 33 minutes and 44 seconds. Well, after that, because you've got the white flag portion of that lap. But yes, it will end. Trust me, it will. But, you know, keep at it. You never know. There might be a big crash between the front 5 that gives you a good finishing spot. But, yeah, it certainly could help him out there. You never know. You keep in it purely because you never know what will happen in a race like this. And where you've got battle packs all the way through, I mean, you look at it, GT4, the front 4 are together. The TCRs, there's the front 5 that are together. There's also 4 from 7th to 10th together. You've got the MX-5s with the battle pack of 4 and 5 there as well. So, yeah, you've got some big groupings of cars. That's what, 5 groupings of cars together out there on track for, as I said, for a 3.6 mile track. Everyone's wanting to use the same bit of asphalt.
Dylan Burse is actually closed on the back here. At one point in time thought he might lose this leading crit. I do wonder if Stolzenberg maybe has a bit of front end damage on his Hyundai Elantra. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but all of the cars in the field have the new damage model, so we are on the new damage model.
Yes, we are on the new damage model. There is there's a slight bit of damage on the front of Stolzenberg's car, but it's not. Well, it's not substantial, but it will affect him a kilometre or 2 down the straight. And
the reason I bring that up is, if you're on the older damage model, Paul, it's fair to say that this TCR car is a bit of a tank.
Yes,
a bit bulky. Whereas on the new damage model, you can't really get away with some of the things that you would be let off with on that older damage model. And I think that explains the drop-off from Stolzenberg. Maybe it's the tires as well, but I think it's more likely the fact that he's now just hurting on these very long straights. Remember, almost the entirety of the 2.5 miles of banking is used in this road course layout.
And I mean, the thing is, as long as he can keep in the slipstream, it's not the end of the world. He can keep with them and to keep up with this this battle, so he'll need that slipstream. There's the battle then currently for P1, 2 and 3 and 4 in your GT4s on the right hand side. There's the TCR battle on the left hand side of your screen, as you see a little bit of a change positions there because Guinness just dropped behind Ferrari, as has Thomas Gibson. Gibson a little bit squirrely under braking into turn number 1, able to stay in second place, but Ferrari is now trying to make some moves forward here.
Yep. Bit between his teeth with about 30-odd minutes left to go. Pascal Stix, by the way, is down on pit lane this time by. Will give us an indication of the pit lane time and the pit stop time expected from Susan Harlow, Chadwick, and Ramstein out front. Remember, they're still maybe 5-6 laps away from coming down on towards pit lane. Ferrari is now up into third as he battles side by side with Corentin Gunes through the second of the hairpins. The right-hand sweeper will give the inside line potentially to Ferrari on the entry into the banking, and Gunes knows you don't want to fight there. Check your momentum up all the way to the bus stop chicane. Ferrari to third.
Gunes is somebody who is confident in his own ability and will certainly try and take advantage of all he can. But he's also a wise driver as well. He knows what is going on here, and he knows that, okay, fine, you've won this little battle, but let's see what the results is at the end of the race. I think if these cars stay together as they are, the final 2 laps is going to be getting the popcorn out and watching the drama unfold.
We'll get at least one photo finish, that's the hope. The MX-5s are now 9 seconds separating the race lead, so not going to be a photo finish for the win. Likely will be, though, for third position, with David Pena now in front of Sonny Kanchin. Roberto Ferrari looking now to the outside of Thomas Gibson as we look rearwards from your race leader Carl Janssen, and that's a whole bunch of steam built up from Ferrari, now challenging for the race lead. Will Core Sim Racing hold the stranglehold at the front? Ferrari's going to go side by side, and contact with Carl Janssen. Ferrari spins around Carl Janssen.
Oh, Janssen is doing so well at the front of the field there. He will be very aggrieved by that. A little bit unnecessary then for Ferrari, taking that line to the inside. Oh, very wide line taken there by Thomas Gibson, and that's allowed actually Ferrari to take the lead in this one. We've got 3 wide. All of a sudden Dylan Burst finds himself second place, battling with the Core Sim Racing car of Corentin Gunes.
And Stolzenberg is closed as a result of all of this fighting. The Audi is now going to get swarmed a little bit. He's the only Audi involved in this fight up front right now, representing the 4 rings. Maxime Ramstein, by the way, also down onto pit road, is going to cycle out about 4 seconds back from Tristan Iglesias. So it is all going on right now. It is all getting interesting with 27 minutes left on the clock.
And you saw there Harlow and Chadwick as well having to work their way through the TCRs.
Look at that.
It's almost as if to say, yeah, Ramstein 17 seconds on the stall. He's only 2 seconds back from Iglesias. This race isn't over for GT4, but yeah, it was almost as if Harlow and Chadwick needed a spotter just to say, do you know what, you're catching up to the lead battle for TCR, come in now and get that pit stop done to stay in cleaner air.
I think I like the call from Ramstein to come in before he got to all that lap traffic. Now he hasn't taken tires, so it will be interesting how that's going to play out. We'll grab another look at this replay from up above. Aerial angle brought to us by ATVO, and Carl Janssen, you're always going to sweep wide to come down and cut into the corner. Just didn't expect Ferrari to carry that momentum all the way into the corner, and I feel so sorry for Carl Janssen there. But I also wouldn't necessarily put all the blame on Ferrari in that situation.
But Ferrari isn't enough alongside to make that outside his line. And so you've almost got to have an element of, you know that car in front is going to push wide on the brakes, because that's what happens when you get on the brakes hard into turn 1. The car understeers. So you know that's going to happen. Just open up the steering just that little bit and, you know, brake that a little bit earlier in anticipation. But he was that determined to get to the front that, unfortunately, the contact was inevitable.
Ramstein now 2.5 seconds back. We'll get the lap time indications of as to how the tires are going to play out for the number 11 car. Susan Harlow, William Chadwick yet to come down and pit for the final time today. Will they go shorter than 17 seconds? Given how much fuel will need to be put into their cars, just has to get them 20-odd minutes to the checkered flag from here. Things have calmed down for a bit, Paul. Not anymore.
Yeah, yeah, they had calmed down, but then business picked up there, that's for sure. As, yeah, you look at that, Harlow and Chadwick at the front, trying to go as long as they possibly can. If you're Chadwick, you're just trying to get as much fuel saving done to get the jump done in the pit stop here. So Chadwick just, in that Team Fordzilla car, biding his time, being patient, and trying to make that strategy work.
Will they come down this time, or will they extend it further, 27 laps into the stint? Remember, we saw 31 plus laps in the opening stanza of the race. They'll still stay out there. They'll continue around. Still Chadwick pushing along Susan Harlow. And in a race where we've seen plenty of drama, is there one more tale to be written? As in the TCR class, Gunes closes on Ferrari. Burst is now 3/10 back from second. Gibson, Stolzenberg still all involved in the fight here. Carl Jansen's got company. Don't think that he's going to have a boring race at the end. Unfortunately, it's just not going to be for the win, as David Baker gets shoved off wide by Hugo Brandau.
Yeah, that was a little bit rude, wasn't it? But all the TCRs, bar Jake Maloney, who's still out there on his own, covered by less than 7 seconds. So, I mean, it's incredible just how close this TCR field is out there today and how they've been able to stay pretty much together out there on track. But Carl Jansen just pulling out that little bit of a gap now over Kira Wolf as, splitting the MX-5 there. That was one of your Apex Racing cars and the Pure Sims car. So that's going to be Ferguson, isn't it? The Pure Sims car.
Gagnon Renault.
Oh, Gagnon Renault. Sorry, yes. Apologies.
No, that's a Ricardo Zonta moment if I've ever seen one before.
Well, it's not the first time we've seen it this race either,
true.
is it, though? That's very true.
No. That is for sure. And this time there was less chaos that forced, I think it was Bustamante down low. Instead, it was just the logical thing to minimize the distance and try and cover him off. But at least for now, these are cars fighting for what will likely be net 6th position, if I've done the very quick math correctly. And remember, you should never trust a commentator's math, because the reality is we are more likely to get it wrong than we are to get it right. 28 laps in the books for Susan Harlow and Chadwick. So are we going to see them down into pit lane in 3 laps time, or can they extend this stint further and further and further? Back to the TCRs, and here comes Dylan Burst closing bit by bit.
It certainly is, and if you're the core car of Gunes, you've seen what's happened to your teammate by Ferrari. You're thinking, do I just maybe just ease off the brake slightly and just assist you into the corner to get the position, or do you be completely clean and say, look, we're going to do this and we're going to do it fair? But yeah, Dylan Burst, even though the Audi has got a 1% horsepower reduction on the Audi, should I say, yeah, it's got 1% horsepower deduction on it, it's still a very strong car around this track. It's just, as I say, the gearing on it, it's not the best for down the straight in towards turn 1, because it does bounce off the limiter as they go on past the pit entry.
On board with Dylan Burst as they'll come through the left-hand sweeper that gets you back onto the banking. 22 minutes left on the clock. Top 5 still in contention for TCR honors, as David Pena and Tom Voss back for 4th position, 3rd position in the MX-5s continue to duke it out amongst themselves. BOP is always going to be a hot button topic in these iRacing special events, but we have seen here the Audi is up there in the mix. It's just that for whatever reason, the rest of the drivers have elected to go for the Hyundai in a one-off race. That's what we tend to see, Paul. There's no commitments from a lot of these teams, like we'll see in the 24 Hours of Daytona in 7 days' time, to commit to a manufacturer. For example, BMW having associations with Redline and BS Competition. Here, it's just about picking what you want to go faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with this Hyundai is it's a longer wheelbase car than the Audi, so it does have that little bit of stability compared to the Audi out there on tracks. It suits the higher speed tracks as a longer wheelbase car, whereas if you're on a tight twisty track, say somewhere like Long Beach, where we actually had the Friday night prime time this week, it maybe suits the Audi or even the Honda a bit more.
Did we see a Honda today? No, we did.
Yes, we did.
That was the Jack Sedgwick car, wasn't it, that got put up into the wall?
I will say your leading two GT4 drivers are still out there. They're on lap 31 of their stint, so they will be heading towards pit road any time.
There you can see, right side of your screen, the current race leaders, but likely not for long. The gap between Suslin Harlow and Iglesias has held fairly constant at about 34 seconds. They've been trading the lap times back and forth. Last time it was about 0.07 of a second faster for the big green Maniti machine that runs in third. And out of the bus stop chicane, will Harlow and Chadwick be in this time? They could go a couple laps longer. We may be looking at a potential even 15-second stop for those top two, if given how long they've gone, but have to wait and see. I am loving it. Doesn't look like the GT4s are in this time by. At least one more lap, they'll go.
Yeah, so they're playing a little bit of chicken with each other out there, and I'm certainly keeping an eye on them on my own end of things here on my feed that I've got. So yeah, well, I'll keep an eye on them as well, because they've just been putting in lap after lap after lap. And the thing is, Tristan Iglesias has been matching them lap time wise as well, but the thing is, Iglesias, we think, has got that slightly fresher rubber as well that will count towards the end of the race. So we do feel that Iglesias is on for the race win here. Ramstein, it's been interesting to see. Ramstein has fallen back to 2.25 seconds behind Iglesias, has not been able to quite keep up with Tristan.
Now, I don't even think that's necessarily all down to tires. I think the pace that we saw from Iglesias in that second portion of the race for him was just mind-blowing, blistering, the way that he was able to stretch that advantage. I think he's just really, really comfortable with the performance and the balance of his Porsche 718 Cayman. Of course, we've seen Iglesias in 2021 be a part of the Alpine Stars geodesic team, now driving more and more for Maniti. I think Ramstein has just made a mistake as well, because he's dropped back another 2 or so seconds behind Iglesias. He's really not going that fast this time around. Might be traffic as well, there you can see.
Yeah, traffic plays a huge thing on endurance races. We've got 35 cars still running in this race, so not as many as we had to start with. And I think those two leading GT4 cars are powered by miracles right now, because they're now starting their 33rd lap on this stint. Of course, they've not had that sort of quarter of a lap pacing that we had at the start of the race, so they've not had the fuel that was burnt doing that. But it's minimal as that, really. So yeah, I would imagine that Jackson Harlow and William Chadwick will be heading down to pit road potentially this lap.
We'll wait and see. Side by side we're looking, as still 0.3 separates the top two. 3.5 seconds now separates Tristan Iglesias from Maxime Ramstein, who's coming across the line now, where Barney will have a great view of what's going on there. Still TCR, we've got 5 cars battling for the win there. In MX5, Pablo Espes for Obsidian Racing has to hold on for just under 17 more minutes to take the victory in the return of the iRacing Roar. Ion Gagnon Renault has just gotten past Juan Bustamante in their battle for what we believe will be 7th position. I was only 1 off when I did the math earlier. Not bad, no?
Yeah, back of an envelope mathematics always works out, does that.
Back of an envelope, back of the brain.
Oh no, I always have an envelope handy. You never know when you need to do some quick maths, but there we go. These two, to be fair to the two at the front, Jackson Harlow and William Chadwick, they've been putting in a really, really good pace at the front considering that they're heading on towards pit road on here. I can see
they're coming. One's coming.
Well, one's coming. So yes, Chadwick, by being behind all that time, has been able to save some fuel. I was just about to say that in your MX-5s, there's been a little bit of a chat in the sim, and Tom Voss is suggesting let's bump to P2 MX-5s.
Oh, they don't have time, surely. It's 8 seconds the gap. They were about 1 second, 1.2 quicker than Franco Cantor in second. But surely they're just a bit too far behind as David Pena will go to the inside of Sonny Kanchan on the brakes as Tom Voss to make sure he doesn't break up the party. Kanchan's going to go back down underneath the blue and white MX-5 car, and they'll be... This is not... If you're trying to work together, that's not the way to do it. We'll put it that way. Jackson Susan Harlow is already rolling, and I tell you what, he might end up in front of Iglesias. He's getting off the button now. Oh, he's going to be just behind, but in the draft and in a chance of fighting for the victory here. If Chadwick is shorter than Harlow in the box, Chadwick will have the race lead, 17.6 seconds. That was the stop for Jackson Susan Harlow.
Well, here we go then, because William Chadwick is heading down towards the bus stop chicane, so we'll find out in about a minute's time or so as to what the outcome of this is. But I said, you know, you need to go as long as you possibly can, and that's exactly what William Chadwick is doing, the Team Fordzilla driver. Here he is out of the bus stop chicane through NASCAR's turn 3 and 4, and he's going to jump down onto the pit lane, we think, this lap to be able to put his pit stop in.
Well,
or is he staying out?
Yeah,
he's staying out for another lap, and every lap that he stays out, that's 1 lap less of fuel that he needs to put in.
So he, as I said at the start of this race, the new member of the RaceSpotTV team said the maximum you can extract out of that Porsche is 36 laps. So hypothetically, he may still have 2 or 3 laps in the bag to try and extend this race as far as possible. This would be the definition of a splash and dash for Chadwick.
This is where now I'm looking at the lap time that Iglesias is going to put in to see what the difference is here. So across the line they will go now. So a 53.6 compared to a 53.0 for Chadwick. So Chadwick pulled out 0.6 of a second, call it there or thereabouts, on that last lap alone. So Chadwick has got a little bit of a pace advantage still. There won't be that much weight difference between the cars here now, though, because we're so late into this race. So, yeah.
Chadwick's pinning this lap.
Yeah. Here we go, then. Get your beverages in hand and sit back and enjoy the final 12.5 minutes of this race.
0.6 quicker last time by. If Chadwick nails this entry, he will be in front. But the reality is he won't be in front by much, Paul.
Oh, this is going to be tight. This is really going to be tight. And the thing is, as you can see, Iglesias has currently got Jackson Harlow sat near enough on his rear bumper right now, and he's getting a nice draft here, a nice slipstream that will keep him with Iglesias in towards the end of the race. The thing that will break this up is catching traffic at the wrong point, and as I said, there's only well, there's now 36 cars out on track because Owen Carroll has gone back out onto track after a very, very long pit stop. There's a pit stop happening right now. William Chadwick, he needs to get onto the box and stopped in the precisely right position.
Nails the pit road. Execution on pit road, such an understated part of competing at the top level of sim racing. Chadwick, 12 seconds and counting in the box. It's a 14-second stop. He rolls himself off of the lane and should have the race lead. The question will be the margin. Harlow not looking for the move. He knows he can't afford to fight just yet, because otherwise it might be the fight for second. Off of the limiter, there goes William Chadwick. He is 3 seconds clear. It will come down surely to about 2.5, but crucially, he is out of drafting range.
Oh, that is huge. That is huge. Now, the thing is, he needs to keep that same sort of pace that he was putting in before the pit stop to be able to keep ahead, because Tristan Iglesias then, that last lap was a 53.2. So he needs to match that pace now for the final 10 3/4 minutes in this race. But William Chadwick pulling out an absolute blinder here on the pit stop strategy. And Iglesias, we thought that, you know, we called it, didn't we, that Iglesias was pretty much in for a win here. But Chadwick, the pace that he's shown, relentless pace, has been absolutely terrific. But also his light right foot as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, let's not understate the value of that right foot. We've been neglecting TCR, but we focused on it so much in the mid part of the race. Can you really blame us? It is still the 5-car train. Roberto Ferrari from Corentin Gunes, Dylan Burrs, Thomas Gibson, and Konstantin Stolzenberg, who's in the mix, but remember, has some slight front nose damage. That might be costing him very slightly on the top end performance, especially coming out of the bus stop chicane and the run down in towards turn number 1. Gunes has fallen back bit by bit, but I think he is biding his time and waiting till the final laps of the race to make things fun for us, but to ensure that if he can get the move done, he's not going to have too much time to be worrying about the pass back. Iglesias has made a mistake out of the bus stop. Suslin Harlow into second.
Yeah, so change of position there, and that slowdown penalty then that it appears that he got just costs him, and he's dropped back. And I could tell you from experience, from bitter personal experience from last night, that slowdown penalty at the bus stop chicane, even though it comes up as just 1 second, it takes a long way to serve that 1 second penalty, I can guarantee you. So it is brutal around here, is that corner cut penalty.
I think now Chadwick has this in the bag. 3.3 the gap between him and second place Suslin Harlow. Can he hang on with 9 minutes left on the clock? It is coming down bit by bit as well in the battle for second in the MX-5. Sonny Kanchan dropping back from David Pena and Tom Voss. Paul, you had mentioned that Tom Voss had gotten on the blower to try and communicate that we need to work together to close up to Franco Canta in front. They are doing that. That gap now is 5 seconds and closing. Last time by 1.5 seconds quicker with a pair in third.
Yeah, we've lost the 36, by the way. Admi Isaacson in GT4s has taken a tour back to the pit lane, so he's had an issue out there. But no, you're absolutely right there that Tom Voss was certainly getting a bit excited and saying, "Come on, we can do this. We can catch up." I think it's a bit of a tall order, if you ask me. Here's the replay down into the International Horseshoe. This is with some TCR traffic, and it's just pulled over.
I wonder if we'd mentioned the incident limit earlier. I wonder if he infringed on that one and basically realized that was going to drop him anyway to the tail end of the running order in the GT4 class and elected to call it quits. Traffic has meant that Iglesias has caught back up with the Vendaval Sim Racing car as they come through the bus stop chicane. Still 3.3 seconds, coming down very slightly under 3 seconds, separating first and second. 7 minutes on the clock. And we are in for the most spectacular of finishes, at least in the TCR class. Don't count out the battle in the GT4 for the overall victory as well. It's going to be a tall order, though, if Suslin Harlow can catch up to the Team Fordzilla driver, William Chadwick. And I'll go back to what I said earlier, Paul. It's always funny when you commentate on a Team Fordzilla driver, given that they're backed by Ford, when they're not actually in a Ford car. You and I had the pleasure of commentating on Pablo GoPro Lopez in the IRX All-Star Invitational, where fortunately at least he was in a Ford.
I had the pleasure of racing against him as well in the All-Stars, so it certainly it was great to see him in a Ford. So it was good to see that Team Fordzilla were able to get themselves out there in a Ford. But yes, definitely this has been a tremendous race there from Will Chadwick. He's bided his time and made that strategy count, and he is a good peddler, to be fair, in this GT4 as well, don't forget that. But yeah, this TCR battle, this is intriguing. This is just bubbling away, isn't it? It's like a pot on a stove, just bubbling away. and you just don't want it to then sort of bubble over the top and cause a big mess.
And what Chadwick has done here is that reminder that you don't always win the races with moves on track. You win races by understanding at different points at the race what is needed, and Chadwick recognized that fuel saving was more important than battling with Suzlin Harlow, bided his time, waited until the final 12 minutes of the race, took the lead there, and doesn't look like he's going to look back.
And this is, as I say, it's tremendous, that performance and the strategy call. You work together as a team. You'll have your teammates behind the scenes. If you've got a spotter, you'll be talking to your spotter and saying, right, okay, what's my fuel numbers like? What's my lap times like? Am I on a good delta here? Am I meeting the requirements that you need me to do for that fuel strategy to work? And it's certainly paid off for Chadwick. Gunes now is getting a little bit more excited here, and look to the high side then. Thomas Gibson is starting to make some moves. That's on Dylan Burst, but Burst has got the inside line in that Audi, and he'll hang on to third place in TCR. So yeah, as good old Jim Ross used to say, business certainly is picking up. Let's just hope that it doesn't end up in a slobber knocker.
Any more WWE puns you want to throw? We talked about a Royal Rumble earlier, didn't we?
We certainly did, and well, let's see who's going to be... no, I can't use King of the Ring, because that's later on in the Nürburgring 24 hours.
Oh, you could have said Last Man Standing, still would have been
Yeah,
somewhat
that's
valid.
good.
Believe because Chadwick is coming through the bus stop this time, it should be under... Oh, it's close. Is it going to be 2 laps to go or 3 laps to go? I think we're in for 3 laps to go, because the average lap time is about 1:53. William Chadwick should cross the line with about 3:50 left on the clock. And so, by the same token, should be 3 laps to go for these...
Yeah, 3 laps.
Yeah, so 3 laps for these TCR guys to squabble over the victory here. Oh, I didn't ask you for a prediction in the early portion of the race, Paul. I'm going to make your life easier. At least we've narrowed it down to 5 cars. Which way is it going to go? Thomas Gibson looking to the inside of Dylan Burst. He knows he's running out of time.
Yeah, now this is the thing. Thomas needs to make a move now to make it worthwhile for him to try and get to the front of this pack. He needs to get ahead of Dylan Burst if he's going to have any chance of getting a win here. Burst did make a mistake at the bus stop chicane, and that means that he's just dropped back that little bit from the front two. And look at this, Gunes is giving a little bit of a push there to Ferrari. He's trying to make it a 2-car battle for the lead. Gibson to the outside. Burst has got the inside though, and he's going to hang on for the time being, is Dylan. So he's doing a good job representing the four circles, and he'll be heading down towards the International Horseshoe for this front pack. I mean, having raced against Gunes before in the past, and Thomas Gibson, I know how hard charging and how competitive that they are as competitors out there on track. I just can't see past Gunes not biding his time and then making the move, say, on the last lap.
He's been patient. He controlled the middle part of this race. Did have the longest stop out of the entirety of the TCR field, but do not count him out in a race that has seen much of the race be dominated by Core Sim Racing. Right side of the screen, you can see the battle for second has closed in on Chadwick, who has lost out with traffic this last time pass, has caught the MX-5s in an inopportune place. Now 2.4 seconds separates first and second, but with 2 laps to go, it's going to be likely too little too late. But Tristan Iglesias in the big green Maniti machine is looming menacingly in the rearview mirror as Dylan Burst looks aggressively on Corentin Gunes.
Now Burst, he realises that he needs to make the move now to try and get an overtake done on Ferrari, and Gunes realises that, oh, I can't have him getting involved in this one. You look at how Gunes gets out of the draft mid-corner through NASCAR's turn 3 and 4. He doesn't want to catch the back of Ferrari through the middle of that corner because it's not ideal. You want to get the run here on the exit of turn 3 and 4, heading towards the tri-oval here. That's where you get that run, and he's doing a couple of practice runs, I feel. He's trying to get himself set up for the final lap of the race, or is he? Because he's going to the inside of your race leader. Dylan Burst behind as well, making a look. Staying as they are for the time being.
I think that was more in defense from a potential move from Dylan Burst. I think you're right. I like to call it downloading the data, understanding how he needs to get the run out of the bus stop to get to the checkered flag first, because I think the pass will be made on the last lap through the last corner on the run down to the start-finish line. Don't count out Dylan Burst. Don't count out Thomas Gibson. Don't count out Konstantin Stolzenberg. If they can find some track position coming in to the last lap of the race. Dylan Burst knows the time is now. He's coming to the inside of the number 10 car, squeezes him all the way to the grass, and Dylan Burst, the young Australian, has second place, at least for now, and he turns himself on Corentin Gunes.
Oh, Gunes realises that if he didn't get that back, then that would allow your race leader Ferrari to run away, and that's got them a little bit of a gap. If you're Ferrari, then that would mean that you're happy, you've got yourself a little bit of a space there, but we've got one more lap to go here.
Yeah, confirmation, it is the final lap for your leader. One and a bit more laps in TCR. That was aggressive from Dylan Burst and returned by Corentin Gunes. Hard but fair racing. That's what we love about touring cars.
Aggressive racing is what we love about touring cars, isn't it? Certainly they went aggressive there and went hard. Now Gunes, he just needs to stay low. He needs to keep in that draft. He's going to have one opportunity on the last lap here to try and make the move, because you can see he's just reeling in with that slipstream to the leader Ferrari.
Here we go. It's not going to be a drag race for first in MX-5 like we hoped. It will be, though, in the TCR class, and what a treat we're in for. It is still 5 cars in contention, but realistically, 3 cars have the chance. William Chadwick is coming down onto the bus stop chicane for the final time today while the TCRs work their way through the infield. Paul, which car is positioned best here? I think Thomas Gibson is in trouble if he wants to win this race now. He's running out of time.
No, but he can get a 3-car draft, though, going on to the start and finish straight, so don't count him out of this one yet. But you're quite right. William Chadwick onto the final corners.
A strategy masterclass from the Team Fordzilla driver. Chadwick waited until the time was ripe to make the pass happen in pit lane, and William Chadwick wins the first iRacing special event. He roars in Daytona to clinch the 2022 iRacing Roar. Coming onto the banking, though, here comes the TCR cars. The MX-5 pulls to the apron. He wants no part of this.
And I don't blame him as well. He realised what an angry mob of TCR cars this is heading down. Now they're going towards the bus stop chicane. This is where Gunes needs to get the run out of the chicane, but he's got to be careful with Gibson, his teammate, behind as well. Here we go. Final run through the chicane, and it's that run out the corner that he needs, and he's got it. He's got a good run as well.
Has Corentin Gunes timed this to perfection, or has he waited just a little bit too long? Watch on board in the bottom right portion of your screen, looking in and out of the draft, trying to time the run to perfection. Here comes Gunes chasing down Roberto Ferrari. It's going to be low. He can do that. You can run as low as you want and all the way to the line. Corsim Racing, who started this race on top, will finish it on top. Corentin Gunes pips Roberto Ferrari by 0.06 of a second. What a phenomenal way to kick off 2022 and the iRacing special events. We didn't see Pablo Espes cross the line in the MX-5 class to win there, but Paul, it is so good to have the iRacing Roar back in our lives.
Oh, I love this event. It's a really, really good event, and what a finish that was there. Gunes doing a superb job, timed it to perfection in your TCRs, and well, Let's not forget about the MX-5s as well. Pablo Espes winning that one. We'll get to the results shortly, but my goodness, that was just a thrilling race from start to finish.
What more can you want from Daytona? We got the 24 hours coming up in a week's time, but I tell you what, if you wanted a run to the line for the ages, it delivered here today. Well, that wraps up 2.4 hours of racing. That wraps up the first of the iRacing special events, a journey that will take us from here, the high banks of Daytona, all the way to December inside the Tulsa Expo Center for the 2022 iRacing Chili Bowl Nationals. William Chadwick for Team Fordzilla conquers in the GT4, 2.6 seconds clear of Jackson Suslin Harlow, who pips Tristan Iglesias in the big green machine from Maniti for the second step of the podium. What a middle stint it was for Tristan Iglesias, but the strategy just did not work in his favor. Pascal 6 rounds out the top 5, while Daniel Ferguson made an interesting short call early to work his way up into 6th. Down in 7th, Juan Bustamante on debut for the Apex Academy is in front of Ian Gagnon-Renault, less than a tenth separating those two drivers. Guillermo Egloff and Spencer Kostowitz round out the top 10 in GT4. Ross Woodford in 11th, a bit of a difficult day for the Team Fordzilla driver. He's in front, though, of Travis Schwenke, the only BMW in our field who finishes one lap down. Adam Isaacson, a late race retirement, along with fellow retirees, Michael Yanni and Bo Albert. Then in the TCR class, it was Corentin Gunes who won by 600th of a second. Roberto Ferrari led coming out of the bus stop on the final lap. He finishes down in 2nd and marginally in front of Thomas Gibson. The top 3, the podium position winners, separated by 1/10 of a second. Dylan Burson 4th with Konstantin Stolzenberg down in 5th. Carl Jansen, David Baker 6th and 7th positions, while Manu Rayo Largo 8th, Hugo Brand down 9th, and Kira Wolf 25 seconds back. Something surely happened to her, down in 10th position. Jake Maloney in 11th spot will be glad this race finally came to an end. Pablo Castro, Josh Thompson got mixed up with an incident coming out of turn 4, as did a number of other cars. Kimo Suminen retired by himself, as did Kieran Harrison, but Jack Sedgwick, George Simmons, and Diogo Pinto all retiring from what was a stacked TCR field. In the MX-5, Pablo Espes wins here with Franco Canta and Tom Voss through the top 3. In 4th, it was Sonny Kanchan who led the race for large portions of it, with David Pena, Christoph Sanchez, Simone Modica, Felix Voter, Tomoyasu Inatani, and Shono Goto through the top 10. In a big class, Franco Ruggeri, Owen Carl, Jasper Reichen, Yannick van der Zande, Arturo Costas, Tom Raichi, and Brad Rutten round out the field here today. Celebrations ongoing here in Daytona International Speedway, and we'll now take the time to talk to your race winner, William Chadwick. Paul Smith is standing by in victory lane.
Well, here he is then, the man with the lightest foot in all of sim racing, William Chadwick. Congratulations then on the victory here. Just talk us through that, because it really was a strategy race, that one. Oh, at least we would do if we could hear William at the moment. Hopefully we can get this all sorted out. This is the joys of live broadcasting here on RaceSpotTV, and I'll just be able to fill a little bit of time here for William while hopefully we can get these things sorted. William, have you got a copy with me? That will be a no, Arjuna, at the moment. Having a few technical problems. As I say, the joys of live broadcasting.
I tell you what, if he's really part of the RaceSpotTV team, it's only fitting that he starts off his career with us with something like that. But Paul, let's reflect on what we've seen then before we wrap things up and say goodbye. Extraordinary. The MX-5s put on a show at the start of this race. Didn't finish off as maybe we would have wanted, but ultimately, 3 classes of competition, 3 very deserving winners, and it all builds up for the first of the big special events in 7 days' time, the iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona. Everyone can catch the action live January 22nd at 12:20 p.m. UTC. Can't wait to see how that's going to go.
It's going to be interesting to see how that one goes. Of course, as we mentioned earlier, LMP2 and GT3 are the two categories of cars that are going to be out there for that first iRacing special event of the year. And it's the race with the longest amount of night time here that we have on iRacing. In terms of the special event, so it really is racing under the lights, and it looks spectacular as the sun goes down.
And very different sort of a race to what we saw today, Paul, because of course 3 classes here, solo sort of endurance race, that is twice around the clock. It's crazy to think that the first ever 24 hours of Daytona here on iRacing was fixed daytime condition, the second one was fixed nighttime condition, and now we've got this glorious day-night cycle that will bring us through the night into the glorious hours of the morning and all the way to the checkered flag.
Yeah, certainly. As the years have gone on and the iRacing have developed the simulator, each and every build, it just keeps on getting better and better. So hopefully we should be able to speak to Will just very quickly because he seems to have got his microphone working. Will!
Hi!
There we go, the mic's working. Just talk us through that. That was really a strategy race, wasn't it?
It was. I knew what I wanted to do going into it, and it was just fuel saving. I mean, you didn't want to. It was really interesting though after the first stop with how people split up, like Tristan's strategy, and then also a few others like Daniel Ferguson and Ian. They all split their strategies, taking I think around 60 litres, so that's enough to take tyres. So I believe they were on 2-stop tyres because you can do tyres and fuel at the same time in GT4. But yeah, my plan always from the beginning was to save as much fuel as possible, and just try and to have that gap at the end, because the tow in the GT4s goes back for like 3-4 seconds. It's absolutely ridiculous, honestly. It's such a joke.
Well, was there a point where you were sort of basically just looking at the time to Iglesias and just wanted to try and keep it under a certain delta, knowing that you would have to take that, 35 seconds, well, no, not more than that actually, about 40 seconds pit road traverse time on that final stop? Were you just keeping an eye on that time and trying to work to a number whilst also saving fuel?
Well, I use a software that gives me the fuel numbers, so I can always see my fuel numbers at the same time. But in terms of like Tristan's gap, I was a bit concerned because obviously I came out the box and it was about 13.7, and then it ended up going up to about 20. So I was a bit concerned for that gap, but I knew that he had less fuel, so his car would be faster. So me and Jackson could push on, and I was just focusing on keeping behind Jackson, pushing Jackson through to elevate our lap time and make sure we had that gap when we came for the final stop.
And just very briefly, next week, of course, it's the Daytona 24 Hours. Team Fordzilla, how are you looking for that?
Looking all right. We're not looking too bad. Bit of a question whether we'll make top split, to be honest, with the team average. But I am definitely excited for it. And yeah, bring it on. I absolutely love Daytona, and yeah, it's just a great event indeed.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Will, and congratulations on not just the win, but also getting your microphone working. But Arjuna, I think that's all that we've got time for, I'm afraid.
That wraps up the first of the iRacing special events, live from the World Center of Racing. It's time to say goodbye. We'll see you, though, in 7 days' time for the iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona. Do not miss what is bound to be an enthralling race, the first time 2 classes of competition with a brand new LMP2 GTD format, and we'll have uninterrupted coverage for you live here on RaceSpotTV. For now, though, it is time to wrap things up. A reminder, you can also follow along with all things RaceSpotTV by following us on social media. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube if you haven't already, and the bell next to it to get notified every single time we go live with a great sim racing series we get to cover. On behalf, though, of our partners ATVO, Doug Beard providing our timing and scoring and cameras for today, the entire team at RaceSpotTV thanks you for watching. My name is Arjuna Kenkipati, delighted to have been joined by the man in the hat, Paul Smith. We'll see you in 7 days' time. For now, though, so long and goodbye.